On today's special episode of Homeworthy, we're stepping into the inspiring, story-filled homes of writers. First, we'll visit author Anna Kloots in her dreamy Paris apartment, a delightful reflection of her eclectic style and vibrant personality. Then we'll head to New York City to tour the cozy and charming 400-square-foot studio of freelance writer and content creator Claudia Williams. From there, we journey upstate to Rhinebeck, New York, for a peek inside the warm, inviting family home of author Maggie Pouncey. Lastly, we'll cross the pond to London, where journalist Jess Alavi-Ellis opens the doors to her thoughtfully renovated home, a soulful blend of global inspiration and family love. Enjoy! You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
If you're looking to make your own space more homeworthy, we've teamed up with Cherish, our go-to online destination for chic, one-of-a-kind finds, sourced from the world's most wonderful vendors.
Mercury drops are from an artist I found on Cherish.
Whether we're after a bold statement piece or the perfect finishing touch, Cherish has extraordinary items that leave a lasting impression.
This table I bought on Cherish from Berlin, and it has a little bit of it's a tray, and it is mid-century, and it's one of my favorite pieces.
It's where we find iconic looks to set homes apart.
I think many dealers would agree that Cherish is the absolute best.
So to support Homeworthy and discover amazing items from Cherish, scan the QR code or click on the link below to start shopping.
Hi, I'm Anna. This is my apartment in Paris. Welcome to Chez Moi.
You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story. By clicking the join button below, you not only support the production of these videos, you also gain access to exclusive content just for members. Today, you'll get an inside look into Anna Kloots' office that not only overlooks the streets of Paris, but also doubles as her closet. Join today to see more of the homes you love.
I'm Anna Kloots. I'm an author, and we are here in my home in Paris, France. And this is my dog, Gustave de la Miette. My apartment here in Paris, I looked for about 4 or 5 months. It is incredibly difficult to find an apartment here as an expat, and I knew the neighborhood I wanted to live in and certain things that I always dreamed of my apartment in Paris having. And I finally stumbled upon this place around 3 years ago, and it had a lot of work that needed to be done. And I basically begged the owners to let me live here. I said I would do all the work myself, and they said yes, gave me the keys, and I got started on the biggest DIY project of my life. My apartment is 78 meters squared. In square feet, that is around 800, 900 square feet. It is a typical old Parisian building, but it's not Haussmannian style. I've kind of given it a lot of those details on my own to make it kind of like faux Haussmannian. But it's a typical Parisian apartment with a lot of the typical characteristics that you would find here. I found this apartment on my own, and I was coming from New York City, so I was used to tiny kitchens, tiny apartments. I had never lived in anything bigger than a studio. I had never even had a door on my bedroom door. I had always dreamed of having a bedroom door, but I had never even had a bedroom door in a studio. So I always dreamed of having an apartment here, and I had a very clear idea of what I wanted my apartment here to look like. I wanted herringbone floors, I wanted old marble cheminées, I wanted chandeliers, and when I found this place, it had a couple of those things. I knew it had the bones of something that could be great, but it was in pretty bad state. I was sort of blinded by my experience living in New York and what I was used to there, that I looked around and I thought, okay, this is actually really charming. But there was a lot to be done. The kitchen didn't work at all. The kitchen cabinets were broken. There was no oven. There was no fridge. It is very typical in Paris that your apartment comes without a kitchen at all. And you as the renter are responsible for providing all of the appliances. So I had to get the oven, get the fridge, get the washing machine, haul all of these things into the apartment. I had to do a full renovation on the kitchen actually, because it was just in too bad of a state to keep. The cupboards were broken and they weren't working, and everything was just like quite old and dirty. And then I kind of embarked on adding all the charm that I wanted that wasn't here. So I did all the wall molding myself with the least inefficient way you could ever do it. It was me and a hammer and nails, and like just this project that went on for months of me adding all the what they call here molière, like all the old wall moldings. I bought a marble fireplace on the French version of Craigslist called Le Bon Coin, and I reassembled the fireplace in my office because my apartment didn't have one and I wanted one. So it's not working, but I wanted the charm, I wanted the style of it, so we did that. All the walls we repainted. It was a lot of work. It was like a many month, little by little project to really get everything to where it is today. This is the little entryway. When I moved in, I really wanted to wallpaper this to give it a little bit of a pop, but I couldn't find any wallpaper that I loved. And then one day I was scanning in the brocante, which are the flea markets here, and I fell in love with all these old postcards of Paris. And I thought, I wonder if I could just make my own sort of wallpaper out of vintage postcards. And that's exactly what I did. I sought out the ones that I really loved the messages, and then the ones that were specifically Paris. And I sort of rearranged them myself here, just put them up with sticky tack. And there's all different areas of the city that I love, and then all the handwritten messages. I loved, as an author, to have my entryway be filled with other people's stories and other people's stories from visiting Paris, what they wanted to tell people when they got back home and the images they wanted to share. And then I've also mixed in a few new things. I have little love notes my boyfriend leaves me, and this is a tradition of mine every year in Paris. I go into this vintage photo booth, and on the same day, which is the anniversary of the day I moved here, I take a picture in the photo booth. One postcard my dad sent to me that is not from Paris at all, but this was actually a postcard addressed to my great-grandmother, Catherine Westphal. And what's really incredible is I have some of her dishes in the kitchen as well. And this was a little Valentine that my great-grandfather sent to her. And so that's the one little piece that isn't Paris but reminds me of my family. I have my yellow tulip here is significant. When I first got to Paris, I moved into an Airbnb, and it was the first place that in Paris I truly felt like I lived. And there was a big vase of yellow tulips when I got there. And I'm Dutch, my roots are Dutch, and I just instantly fell in love with these poetic tulips, and I always love having yellow tulips in my house as a result, to bring me back to that moment of when I first stepped into my new life in Paris and saw these bright, sunny, happy tulips, and I just honestly sat down at a table and cried. I was so happy, so I love to buy yellow tulips. And this is a picture of, this is my grandmother when she was younger. And I framed this for my entryway. I love having pieces of my family here. Everyone I love is on another continent and very far away, so I love having pictures of family, but especially when they're old pictures. I love these two pictures of my grandmother, and I thought it went really well with the vintage vibe of my entryway. This is my go-to baseball hat right now. This is actually a brand I started myself here because c'est pas mal is something that French people say all the time. It means it's not bad, but it's the equivalent of amazing. And I always, my boyfriend is Parisian, and he makes fun of me for saying things are incredible, amazing, wow, best thing I've ever had, magnifique. And the French version of that is c'est pas mal, which means it's not bad. So I loved that phrase and had to put it on a hat. So this is the living room. The French call this the salon. And probably my favorite thing in here is my mirror. People always ask me for a link for this mirror, and I say this is an antique. I knew I wanted a big old, I love things that feel like bring me back to watching Beauty and the Beast as a little girl, and a big vintage mirror just brings me right back to watching Beauty and the Beast. And I loved that it's kind of cracked, it's kind of broken, and it just felt like a good centerpiece to the room. These I actually took from the Opera Garnier. I was invited to the Opera Garnier's opening ballet gala in January, and it's like this big fun party at the opera that lasts all night, and they decorate the opera different every year. And these dried flowers were used to decorate the whole grand staircase. It was so beautiful. And on the way out of the party, people were invited to take them and take them home because otherwise it would go to waste. So I very eagerly got up a big handful of these, and then I love having this here because it reminds me of that night, and it feels like a little piece of the opera in my apartment. I was looking for a vintage dog bed once I got him. In the Carnavalet Museum here, which is the Museum of the History of Paris, they have a little vintage antique dog bed, and I just instantly was like, if I ever get my dream dog, I want that. But they're hard to find, obviously, and quite expensive. But I ordered myself this hat box of this luggage company that I love that makes these beautiful leather cases. And the hat box came, and he jumped in. And I thought, okay, well, I guess that's what's meant to be your bed now. So now this little hat box is his bed. And actually, it's quite practical because it stores his toys, his baguette, and his croissant, and his Eiffel Tower, which is his favorite. And then if we ever are going on a trip, it's easy and ready to very easily portable and ready to go. My little side tables I also found at the Brocante. I wanted them to be mirrored, and so I was looking for exactly this for a while. And I wanted it to be mirrored so that it would reflect the ceiling and the details on the ceiling and the chandelier. I love moving them around in different ways. So, they're 3 little nesting tables, and sometimes I just rearrange them differently. I have the bones of this place set, but then there's a lot of little details that I shift around. I'm constantly redoing the bookcase, rearranging these tables, changing what's on them. I like to sort of have the space be unfinished. To me, it is never just set in stone and everything knows exactly where it's gonna go. I like to play with it a lot, and especially with each season when I do a big spring clean, I'll just change things around, add a few new things. And I really like that how slowly everything came together. It was truly 2 years of work before it looked like it did right now. And for a while I just had a couch, and then I went through different, I had random chairs before I found the exact ones I wanted, and I had to sort of make that choice of just waiting to find things that I really fell in love with instead of just buying something for the sake of having something here. So the title of this painting is Circe in Her Garden. And when I moved here, this was my sort of bachelorette pad that I was setting up, and it was me post-divorce, making my place, making my thing on my own. And Circe is this creature in Greek mythology, this woman in Greek mythology who would sort of lead men with her immense power and ways and sort of lead them to their death, essentially. And when I had learned that that was the name of this painting and that's who it was, I thought this yes, this magical enchantress powerfully standing in the middle of my living room, that is exactly what I want to be here. So she's my favorite piece of art. My bar cart, I made myself. It wasn't supposed to be a bar cart, but I was looking for a gold bar cart. And then I started to realize that everyone had them, and there were so many replicas. I'd wanted a vintage one, but I couldn't find the one I liked. And the more I looked at them, the more I realized that they were kind of in everyone's home. And I'm definitely a person who, once I realize everyone has something, I no longer want it. And this came one day when another piece of furniture I ordered was being delivered. This was in the back of the truck. And the guy said, I'll give you that side table for $20 if you want. I didn't have almost I basically had no furniture in here at that point. And so I was like, 20 euros, yes, I'll take it. Brought it upstairs, and for a while I was just using it as a little side table. And then I realized that actually if I removed the drawer, it perfectly fit a couple bottles, and I made my little bar area on top, and now it's my miniature little makeshift bar cart. And these glasses I took from my parents in Ohio. This is actually China. They were gifted on their wedding. So I love having little bits of my family with me, and little meaningful things like that are sort of scattered throughout this apartment. And I absolutely love champagne, and I pop champagne bottles and pretty much anytime there's anything to celebrate. And so I keep these right here because I use them often. I'm definitely someone who believes in using the good china, using the silverware, celebrating every day like it's your last, because why not? He literally loves it. And it's like the cutest. Like, Paris was my dream, this dog was my dream, so to see my dream dog playing with his Eiffel Tower toy, like, it brings me so much joy to be like, wow, you are exactly what I always dreamed of. It just is, it's so cute the way he bites and plays and loves that thing. I feel like we share this love for the Eiffel Tower. I have an insane love for the Eiffel Tower, and I'm glad my dog has it too. This was my mom's, which I love. I did, when I first moved, I absolutely had truly nothing. When I moved to Paris, I knew no one, and I came with 5 suitcases that were only filled with clothing and books. So I really started collecting everything. At some point, I did go back to the US, back to my parents' home, and that's where I picked up their china and a couple other things that I knew I wanted to be here. I wanted bits of my family here, even if it was just a meaningful vase or a certain champagne coupe or a frame that was in my bed a frame that was in my bedroom as a child. So I kind of gathered all of those smaller items, and I actually shipped things here. Took 3 months, but it was well worth it. And so now I have a lot of little bits of my family scattered around here, and that really means a lot to me. So this vase was something that my mom had in the kitchen for the longest time, and so to have it here is really special to me. I change around this bookcase a lot. I like to mess with the different books and where things are. When I found this, I loved that it matched Cersei's head, and it felt like it just totally worked. I have these old vintage frames, but then I have family photos in them. That's my mom, and that's our old giant conversion van. There's 7 of us in our family, so we had to get around in this giant bus that we called the Gladiator, and I love that that's me and my sisters and my mom. This is honestly super special to me. I write about this in my book too. This is a poem that my brother had made for me in Palm Springs. I was going through a really difficult period at this time. I write about in my book what a difficult time this was, and just a real moment of like self-doubt and not being able to see my own worth and really struggling with where I was in life. And this poem was written in about 5 minutes on the street in Palm Springs by a man who calls himself the typewriter troubadour. And it only later did I realize that this was basically fortune telling. And I loved having this. I kept this, of course, and then I framed it, and I keep it here on my bookcase. My chandelier is absolutely everything I always dreamed of having here. I found this on Le Bon Coin, which is basically the French version of Craigslist. I went to pick it up at this apartment in the 6th arrondissement, the most amazing apartment I've ever seen. And it was this old, beautiful place. There were amazing antiques everywhere. This was hanging in like an alcove above this beautiful piano. And they were actually still taking it down when I went there to pick it up. They were modernizing the whole apartment, which to me was just like a travesty. So they were taking down this chandelier, and I was thinking, you shouldn't be taking this chandelier down. But I do want this chandelier, so I'm not going to say anything. And I knew I wasn't going to change their mind about the style direction they wanted to go in for their home. But I was very happy to get to see its former life. And I love music. I wish more than anything I could just sit down and like play the piano like Elton John style, but I don't have this gift. But I love knowing that my chandelier used to hang above this amazing, beautiful piano in this little alcove in this wonderful little apartment by Saint-Germain-des-Prés, and now it's mine. This is where I go first thing in the morning. I wake up, start making the coffee, and while the coffee brews, I come in here, I turn on the radio, I set the radio to the exclusively ABBA station, I turn the volume up to the max, and I blast ABBA. And I dance while the coffee brews every morning for 1 song, 2 songs. Sometimes I get carried away, and 30 minutes later the coffee's cold. But it is the way that I love to start my morning. It brings me so much joy and energy. And I truly wake up every day so grateful that I have created this place and that I get to live here, and it sort of is just my way to like instantly start the day on a high and to be grateful and happy, and now little Miette dances with me, so now I have a dancing partner and I'm not doing it alone. This picture my sister gave me. This is my late brother-in-law. He passed away from COVID in July of 2020. And we all lived in New York together for many years. He was an acclaimed Broadway actor and aspiring musician. And this picture to me is absolutely my favorite photo of him I've ever seen. His cousin actually took it. But this is the New York hustle. He's walking down the streets of New York. And this is so New York City, where you're carrying all your dreams, all your aspirations, all your hopes, and you're hustling, trying to make your dreams come true. And that's what he did every day. That's what I did every day, what my sister did every day. And I love having this framed in my house. And he loved music. I believe he's up in heaven as like DJ of my life, of my sister's life. And so I love keeping him here by the radio. And this picture just reminds me to live every day to the max, to live your life, and to never stop hustling, to carry your dreams with you and take them with you wherever you go. One of my favorite things to look for at the flea market is old frames. And I love then, of course, filling them with pictures of family. So I have my grandma and grandpa and my sister, my parents. This lamp, this is a lamp, and when I found this, I flipped out. I was in Florence last year. I went alone on a little solo trip. I love Audrey Hepburn. Sabrina is, I will say, Sabrina Fairchild heavily influenced me on moving to Paris. You know, she is sent to Paris by her father to learn how to cook and to become a woman. And she comes back, 2 years later, and she's like unrecognizable to the people around her, and she's chic, and she has a little poodle, and her life is completely transformed because of Paris. And so I love Sabrina. I love Roman Holiday. I love all of the Audrey Hepburn movies. And I found this lamp in Florence that features her and Humphrey Bogart, a scene from Sabrina, made out of a book. And I was just like, my mind was blown. It's this amazing small artist. Each one is completely made by hand. Each one is completely different. I happened to find this one. I bought it instantly, and I just knew that it had to be in my apartment. This I brought over from the US as well. I mean, magic is a big theme in my life. My book is called My Own Magic. I used to have a very different relationship and association with magic. My ex-husband was a magician, and a lot of my process of rediscovering my own joy and my own path and my own worth post-divorce was discovering what my own magic inside of me was and using that magic to fuel my dream life. And when I found this magic written out in French, magique, 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 you are magique, I was like, well, that belongs on a wall. So that came up from overseas. My sister actually brought it here for me when she came to visit. And yeah, that's a pretty special piece of art to me. I call this style old French grandmother meets Barbie's dream house, and that's kind of a co of my brother and my boyfriend. They came up with those two terms. My boyfriend was telling me that because everything I was buying was from the flea markets and had this old French style, that it was everything. He kept saying, you know, this is trop grand-mère, c'est trop grand-mère. And but that's kind of what I was going for. I always dreamed of having an apartment here that was filled with all these antiques and unique things that I would find at the flea market. That was absolutely my dream. I didn't want to go to a new store and just say, sure, I like that, I'll take that, it goes with that, and package everything up from one shop. I really wanted it to be this unique curation of things that really spoke to me, and pieces that I knew had a history, or I could at least imagine the history of. Which I have done quite vividly for everything I purchased. I've created its whole past life and what it once was and who once owned it. But then the pink aspect is what makes it kind of Barbie dream housey. I've always been super girly. This is the first apartment I've ever had on my own. This is the first lease I ever signed on my own and place that I ever got to make mine. I spent the last 10 years traveling nonstop. I was married for 6 years and living in someone else's space that was kind of already designed when I moved into it. And because it was set in stone and we were planning on getting a home together, nothing about that apartment was changed ever. And it was very much a man's apartment, and I was just dying for something to be pink, something to be girly, something to be frilly, and I couldn't do it. And so when I moved in here, I kind of like let that flag fly, and I was like, I'm having a pink kitchen, I'm having a pink bed that looks like it popped out of Marie Antoinette's room in Versailles. I am just going for it, and it has brought me so much joy that everybody who walks into my apartment that knows me says, well, you definitely live here. Like, this apartment just screams you. And that is absolutely what I was going for. I didn't have any particular style in mind. I wasn't on Pinterest pinning things. I wasn't looking at pictures and trying to say, I want it to look super Scandi, or I want it to look, you know, Nordic farmhousey. Like, I really just started looking for things that I loved and things that felt like me, and I just threw it together, and it became Barbie's dream house if she was older and divorced and moved to Paris. My dining table, I went through 4 before I settled on this one. I thought I wanted wood, I thought I wanted glass, I had many different ideas, and I finally realized that I needed a travertine table. This is from the 70s. I found this at a vintage market, and I just loved the shape of it. I knew that the shape was perfect and right for this space. Whenever we would go out to eat as a family of 7, my dad would always ask for a round table. He always wanted a round or an oval table. He hated being at a big long table. And I knew when I moved here that I wanted to have people over. I always wanted to have big dinners. I'm from a big family, and I love being surrounded by big groups. So I wanted a big table that I could have people over. It fits, 6 comfortably, but I've crammed 12 plus around here. It can be done with stools and sharing. So I love having dinner parties here. And even though I have an office, I spend a good part of my day working right from this little spot as well, because I love being by the window. And I just like that it kind of feels like the center of the room. These chairs I actually found from a Belgian company. When I found them, I fell in love with that clam shape because it instantly reminded me of Botticelli's painting, The Birth of Venus. And the whole meaning of this painting is the divine, driving force of love. And I moved here really struggling with love for myself, with the loss of love, with my marriage failing, and I really wanted to create a place and a new life that was just centered around finding love within myself, amazing love in my life, my love for Paris, really just this new celebration and getting excited about the idea of falling in love again with a city, with me, with someone new that I would meet. And so I loved that these were, shaped like that clamshell, when I first moved in, I didn't have any like initial idea of what I wanted the interiors to look like. But then when I saw those chairs and they reminded me of Botticelli's Birth of Venus, then I thought, okay, how else can I bring those elements in? So I chose the couch because it is this wave. It's this blue, splash. I'm also Aquarius, so it's a perfect representation of my sign. And then the little gold tidbits, it all kind of just felt like it brought the painting to life in a little bit. It was always my dream to live in Paris. I started taking French when I was 12. And my French teacher, the way she taught French, she really was teaching France. She taught culture, she taught food, she taught architecture, and it really just made me fall in love with this far distant country that I had never even heard of before, and I never grew up with dreams of visiting here as a small child, but then I started taking French and I just fell in love with everything about it. And I came for the first time at 18, and that's trip sort of like set in stone that this was my dream to live here. And I promised myself I would live here one day. And it just, something about this city really captures me in all the right ways. I've visited 83 countries around the world, and there's so many of them that I have absolutely loved and have really captured my heart. But Paris does something special to me. It inspires me in the biggest way. I am so overwhelmed by the beauty of it and the subtleties of it, like the little everyday things here, from someone at the market just filling an entire little bag up with leeks and wandering off with them, and I'm left to wonder what in the world would one do with 20 leeks, to the way that people just are always sitting on a terrace chatting with their wine, to spotting adorable old Frenchmen in their berets with their tiny wiry dogs. Like, everything about Paris just totally captures my heart and just sets it on fire. And I knew when I got here that I had to be here, because there's many places in the world that I've loved and I've really enjoyed being, but nowhere makes me feel like Paris does. And as a writer, to be that constantly inspired by everything in my day-to-day is critical to me. And just, I wake up here and I truly still, it's been 4 years, and I wake up here every day and I go, I can't believe I live here. I can't believe I get to live here. I don't know how I got here, but thank God I did, and I can't believe I get to spend another day here. This is my Barbie dream kitchen. When I was moving here, I knew I wanted my kitchen to be pink, and I was asking my brother if I should get a pink fridge or not. And my brother was like, do not get the pink fridge. And I was like, why? I think it'd be really fun. And he was like, get the pink fridge if you want to live in Barbie's dream kitchen. And I said, I do want to live in Barbie's dream kitchen, but when Barbie is a bit older and got divorced and has moved to Paris and creating her new dream life. And so I didn't end up going with the pink kitchen. I didn't end up going with the pink fridge, but I did paint the walls pink and have added a lot of pink things in here. And I call it Barbie's dream kitchen in Paris. So my white fridge. But I brought my pink mixer from the US. It takes a special step-down converter to make this thing work here, but it was very important to me to bring this here, and I love to bake, so I do a lot of baking. Chocolate chip cookies, mostly American recipes. I leave the French baking to the pastry chefs. I have framed little love notes that my boyfriend left me. When it comes to art, I really like it to be meaningful. If it doesn't have true meaning and significance to me, then I don't want it on my wall or something in my home. So when I was thinking about the kitchen, everything in here is maybe a bit silly to someone who doesn't know the story, but to me, everything is super meaningful. So my boyfriend will always make the coffee on the weekend, and when he leaves for work during the week, he'll usually leave me a croissant and a little note. And it honestly just meant so much to me to have someone in my life who would do something like that for me, that I saved every little note, every little scrap of paper he wrote on, and I framed some of them here. these little chairs, these two little bistro chairs we made out of champagne bottle toppers. Like I said, I open quite a few bottles of champagne. I pretty much never have food in my house. I don't go grocery shopping all that regularly, but I am always very stocked on champagne and wine, and I will pop a bottle anytime a celebratory moment happens. These are just a few of my favorite cookbooks. This is my favorite French bakery in New York, and my friend got me this when I was moving here. This is a very famous, I know how to cook all these French recipes. I have attempted a few. My nephew drew this of me during lockdown. This was his portrait of his aunt. He's signed it there at the bottom, Oliver K. And one word to describe me, wine. I love my beret and my bottle of wine. And so he drew this one night having no idea that I was going to take it back to Paris, frame it, and I love having this in my kitchen. This picture was taken on May 19th, 2021, and I call it First Date because this was the day that the cafes reopened after confinement for the first time. Restaurants were shut down until May 19, 2021. I met my boyfriend during confinement. We actually met outside the door of my apartment that I was living at before I moved here, an Airbnb that I was living in before I found this rental. And he lived upstairs, and I met him at the front door the night the second confinement started in October. So we started dating, but we could only have dates in the apartment. And he would come over basically every night. We would cook something fun together, drink wine, dance, talk, laugh. But it wasn't until May 19th that we finally were able to actually go on a date. And we went to Café de Flore, which is one of my favorite touristy, but favorite spots here. And we were sitting there, and everybody this day was so happy. Just everybody was out on the terrace. It was sunny, it was gorgeous, and everyone who lives in Paris was sitting on a terrace drinking wine, and we went all out. We got cheese, we got wine, we got steak tartare, we just went for it. And we were sitting there just happy in this moment. This man comes up to me and he goes, "I just took your picture. Would you like to see it?" And kind of freaked me out for a second because my gut reaction to that was a bit like, "You just took my picture? Okay." And I said, "Sure." He showed me this picture. I got tears in my eyes and I was like, "Oh my gosh, sir, thank you so much. This is incredible. You don't even know how important this is to me that you got this picture of this moment." Turns out he emailed it to me. He is an immensely well-known and important photographer named Peter Turnley, who very often takes photos in around Paris, very often around Café de Flore. And he sent me the print, invited me to print it out and put it in my home, which I did right away. And I couldn't love a picture more. My favorite detail about this is the waiter. You can see the one on the left is still wearing his mask. And two waiters embracing in Paris is pretty rare. That just shows how happy everybody was that day. I don't have a lot of cabinet space, storage space around here, so I decided to just keep sugar, flour, things in these little glass jars. This is my Eiffel Tower pasta, which is just too cute to eat. So while it was meant to be eaten, I don't think it's just become a piece of art to me now. My oven I found in Italy. I really wanted these like brass details, and when you move to Paris, it is not uncommon at all to have to bring your own appliances into your rental. So I had to get an oven anyway, and I thought if I'm going to buy an oven, I want it to be beautiful. I had my heart set on like La Cornue and these ovens that are just way outside of my budget. But I found this, and I obviously love Italian food. Who does not? So having a little piece of Italy here in my kitchen felt right. And this is just absolutely, it makes me want to cook, actually. I am more inspired to cook because of how much I love the oven. And of course I have my Le Creuset. We made some amazing beef bourguignon in here this winter. I'm more inclined to cook in the winter when it's cold outside and you just want to stay in and make something warm and fatty and rich and just cozy up with wine while it cooks. And I really do love cooking in that. It's very fun. When I didn't have a lot of art in here, I feel like kitchen art is always very hard. I didn't want to just have pictures of framed food. I didn't know what felt right, but I had all these walls and they needed filled. And I was home and I realized my mom has these like old folders, like folders you would have as a student in school, full of her recipes, all written by hand on these aged pieces of paper that are now torn up and ripped up. And I gathered a few of my favorites, photocopied them for her so that she still has the recipes, and I brought them back here and I put them in these frames. And I loved the idea of having this little piece of my mom, this little piece of my childhood, and this little piece of America, you know, macaroni and cheese and stuffed green peppers here with me in Paris in my kitchen. It's my mom's handwriting, and when I think about my mom, I remember her saying, you know, what should we have for dinner? Dinner was always the question. She had 7 of us to feed, and so what are we having for dinner was always a big question. She would get out her notebook and scan through these pieces of paper. So I have my mom I have my mom's stuffed green peppers and macaroni and cheese, and then I realized I needed to represent the other women in my family, the other matriarchs. So this is my dad's mother. This is my this is my grandmother Kloots. This is her pie crust recipe. And then I have my mom's mom, my grandma Blatnik, her recipe for strudel. So she was Hungarian and she would always make us chicken paprikash and strudel. And I love having my grandma, and my mom here on the kitchen with me. There was nothing on this wall when I moved in. It was just this big empty wall. And I didn't want to put a big piece of furniture, like a large, you know, vaisselier, as beautiful as they are. I didn't want to put something there that was going to be like a solid piece of wood. So even though open shelving is, you know, potentially for some like an outdated idea, I thought it would work really well for my kitchen. It was going to be not a huge investment to do, and then would allow me to show off a mix and match of a lot of different fun dishes. So I have things here that I got at the Brocante. This is a whole vintage tea set I found again at Vanves, and some of them I've turned into planters. This was my grandmother's. This is all just a fun mix of stuff that I've found either at flea markets or that I brought over from home. So these plates my aunt gave me. My great grandmother, Catherine Westfall, who is the postcard from the entryway, these were her plates. And now they're here in my apartment. I use them whenever I do goûter, which is to have a delicious treat in the middle of the afternoon. I found these at Anthropology and just had to have them, obviously. Je t'aime. My professional journey is anything but ordinary. I thought I wanted to be in fashion. I always, loved clothing and shopping when I was younger, and so I moved to New York City when I was 18, and I went to the Fashion Institute. And during that time, I sort of realized that actually I didn't want to work in fashion. I really liked, everything about the industry, but working in it was not the right fit for me. And I did a semester in Paris, and it was during that time that I just realized what I really loved more than anything was being in another place, being somewhere that isn't where I'm from, and sort of being a fish out of water. And it also gave me a taste of what life here was like, which I knew I loved. And so then my first job was actually in London. I got offered a job in London doing sales and interior design. So it was sort of like a step in the fashion realm, but more into the home section. And I honestly, when I got offered the job, I only took it because it was in London. And at that point, all I knew I wanted to do was live outside of the US. So I lived in London for a year, and during that time I started writing and I started traveling. And I didn't have any friends in London when I moved there. I didn't know a soul. And so I would go on all these solo trips on the weekends because I thought I either go alone or not at all. And EasyJet flights were $20 to Italy, or I could pop it on the train for 40 euros. And so I would take all these little weekend trips by myself, and then I would write about it. And I started a blog and was constantly, sharing things, and Instagram had kind of just started around this time. And so had my Instagram account, and I was taking horrible pictures on my whatever model iPhone I had, and then over filtering them and posting them. And it kind of just made me fall in love with the experience of traveling and then sharing about those travels. And so it was very evident to me that that was what I loved doing. And I knew at that point that I wanted to write a book about traveling, and that's what I wanted to do. But I just thought, you can't just quit your job and try to become a writer. I don't have a degree in this. It's not what I studied. So I kept at it. As always my side hobby. It was just always something I devoted. I would stay up till 2 a.m. writing these blog posts that no one was reading beside my family. But it brought me so much joy and passion that I loved doing it, and it was worthy of the time. And I was still working in sales until I met my ex-husband, and travel was a critical part of my ex-husband's job, and at some point it became sort of essential for me to leave my job and travel with him in order for us to have a functioning marriage. And I did that, wasn't a hard sell for me to say, okay, sure, let's travel nonstop. It was what I really loved doing. And during that time, I was devoting more and more time to taking photography. I was learning photography at that time as well, so that I could take better pictures. And I was writing about those experiences nonstop. And so while I was married, I traveled all over the world, sort of nonstop with my ex-husband, visited multiple continents per year. We were gone about 300 days a year. And I was working for him, kind of wearing many hats. But at the same time, I kept this side hustle of taking pictures, writing about it, sharing. And I made my Instagram account public at the time. And I thought, anybody that I can reach and share these experiences of how amazing these places are, what it's like to spend time with locals, the types of, the ways that travel can really change you and open your eyes. I grew up in a tiny town in Ohio, and most of these places I never even heard of until the opportunity to go there arose. And, suddenly then I was on a month-long road trip through Romania and visiting Dracula's castle and sleeping in these little spooky villages and driving these amazing roads, and just, it really opened my eyes to the world and taught me so much about who I was and what I was good at, what my strengths were, what my challenges were, and really revealed to me how much I loved writing about places and how they impacted me. And I loved sharing, even though it was not doing anything for me professionally, because it just felt like it was a way to give these experiences to other people who maybe would have never dreamed that they too would enjoy Romania. And all it takes is a couple photos and some articles to realize, wow, that's a trip I want to take. So I did that for a long time, and my Instagram account at the time was growing and growing and growing, but in my head it was always very much something that was just a hobby. It was sort of just for fun. And I truly didn't see the potential of what it could be. And I always kept in my head that this was a book I wanted to write one day. And all these stories I was writing down, and all the photographs I was taking, and all the notes I was taking, in my head it was always going to be a book one day. I just didn't really know about what. And when my marriage very suddenly ended in the middle of 2019, I was suddenly without a job, without somewhere to live, without a husband, and without the future that we had planned together. And I really felt very lost and not sure what I was going to do and how I was going to pick up all these pieces and figure out a new life. And I was actually very detached from what I even wanted that new life to look like, because I had spent so many years just doing something for someone else and imagining our life together versus my life alone. And when I kind of took control of, okay, what do I want to do? I realized I love traveling and I love writing. And that was at the point that I said, okay, I'm going to try to find a lit agent and try to write this book that I've been talking about writing for 10 years. And I honestly say it was scarily fast how quickly everything came together once I started devoting my time to the right things, rather than spending time on the wrong things, as I had been giving so much of my time to to the wrong people, to the wrong energy, to the wrong life, to the wrong future. And as soon as I started redirecting, giving my time and energy and focus toward the right future for me, everything just fell into place. And I decided to move here. I met a lit agent. We started working on a book proposal, and I realized that all the notes I had taken and all the photos and everything else, all the journals I had handwritten, stacks of them that I still have, I had been writing a book the whole time. And I had to rework a lot of that and make it into what is the finished product. But it was truly a 10+ year journey that all led me to exactly where I was supposed to be. My book is the book that tells that whole story. Came out last May. It is a memoir about travel and divorce and self-discovery and self-love. It's called My Own Magic. And that book has been out since last May. I did a big fun book tour around the US, and now this year I'm trying to do some more events throughout Europe, which is very fun. And the other book I co-wrote with my sister, which was actually published first, and that book is called Live Your Life, and that is a story about family and loss and sisterhood and grief and finding the silver linings. Welcome to Versailles. Just kidding. So I went full out Marie Antoinette inspired with my Louis XV. This is called a corbeille, which means basket, corbeille bed. I knew I wanted this, and I sacrificed size of bed because they don't make these in larger than 140 centimeters. There was no king at the time. There was no double king for sure. There was no king-size bed at the time. There was no California king, that's for sure. So 140 centimeters is the biggest I could find in this corbeille style without having it custom made and being super, super expensive. I found this on Le Bon Coin. I drove out about an hour outside of Paris and picked it up from this charming older woman who had it in her like attic area, and I absolutely love it. I tried super hard to find the same silk to have this. My dream is to have this same silk as the curtains and do a full-on, like, you know, very, very old inspired thing here. I have to save up for that. That's in the budget. I have looked it up and I've found the sample, but to get it as the exact match is actually quite hard because this is older. I think this was made around like the 40s. This is not from the period, but this was made in the period style around the 40s or 50s. So the color has actually faded quite a bit. So getting an exact match is sadly not possible. This is a painting of my, when I was going through my parents' stuff in the basement, when I was pulling out their wedding china and vases and all these other things that I wanted to bring back here with me, I stumbled upon this oil painting of my mom done as a kid in New Orleans. I brought it upstairs and I was like, Mom, what is this amazing painting? And she said, oh, you know, and told me they were at a family trip and she just had someone do this on the street. My aunt has one too. And I said, can I take this back with me? And she, you know, tears filled her eyes. She was like, you want that? You want to hang that in your home? I brought it here, reframed it, and I thought it was the absolute perfect thing. Her blouse matches the bed. And just all the colors and everything else flowed so well. And again, like, I love having a lot of pictures of my family, but that it's not a photograph that's like so evidently my family. So I have my grandmother as a young girl in the entryway, and then my mom as a young girl in my bedroom. My little nightstands on each side, I didn't want them to be a perfect match. So one is floating and then the other is just little teeny tiny. I mean, those, you know, a lot of this bedroom to me is very Versailles, and then is also Beauty and the Beast. So when I moved into the Airbnb that I found here, before I found this apartment that I lived in for a while, they had a big wardrobe just like this. And I fell in love with it because it just reminded me of the wardrobe in Beauty and the Beast. And I felt like it was going to spring to life and dress me for dinner. And I absolutely knew that I didn't know what kind of furniture I was going to get when I got a place of my own, but I knew I needed this. And I also found this on Le Bon Coin. I have found so many amazing things there. I drove about an hour and a half outside of Paris, and there was a home, and this was in a little girl's bedroom. She was about 12 years old, I think. And my boyfriend and I were disassembling it in her room, and she was telling me that she was going to use the money from this sale to get an IKEA PAX. And I was like, again, just like the chandelier, like I wanted to stop her. I wanted to be like, oh no, you're gonna regret this one day. You're really gonna regret this one day. But she desperately wanted something modern and cool and fun, and she had her heart set on IKEA PAX, and I had my heart set on this, and so it was not at all a fair trade, but I'm really happy with the trade that I made. And this was the first thing that was in the bedroom. There was nothing else for a long time, but this was the first thing. Chandelier I also found on Celancy, so that's an antique. I wanted something a little smaller and more feminine in here. This lamp I found at the Emmaüs, so sort of like the French version of Goodwill. I was at an Emmaüs near to where my boyfriend's family lives, outside Versailles, and I found this for $50. My boyfriend was not supportive of this purchase, but I was not about to leave it there for $50. Again, here I have a little love note that he wrote me that I signed and that I framed and put on the wall. This is full of basically just, this isn't the jewelry I wear a lot, but it's all the fun jewelry. Most of this was my grandmother's or his family heirlooms, and I loved having it here on display in this cute little vitrine. So just special things that mean a lot to me personally, and I like having them out and wear them when it's a special occasion or something feels like a fun reason to dress up. These fellows I have a couple of. I sometimes swap out the words. I also have Je t'aime and Belle vie. This is an amazing woman here who is from Africa, and everything is made in Africa. And then she has a shop here in the Marais, but now has her pillows, and she makes beautiful plates and tote bags, and she's in several of the shops. I see her things everywhere now, but when I first saw her little shop in the Marais, I loved it, and this is all done by hand and just so beautiful with all the fun different prints and embroidery. And my rug I just recently found. I was at Maison Objet, which happens twice a year in Paris. It's a big, amazing design trade show, and if you're lucky, you can snag things that the people are actually selling on site. It's mostly for wholesale, but a few of the things you can actually buy there and take with you, and rugs is one of them. And I spotted this. I've been looking for a rug for this room for the longest time that was like bright, that matched the color, and I felt like it should be floral, but I wanted there to be a contrast both in style and in like, I just wanted to have a different vibe. I almost got something that was very, grand mère, as my boyfriend would say, but I felt like that would be taking it too far in that direction. So I was looking for something that was a bit of a contrast, had that bold pop of color, but still felt floral and feminine. And I saw this truly from across the room because I noticed that like bright pink color, and went running. It turned out to be the perfect size, like it was made for this room. And they rolled it up, and I took it home from Maison Objet. And this little chair I also got on Le Bon Coin. I just wanted a little thing in here that I could use to be honest, throw my clothes on at the end of the day. And this came from Le Bon Coin and was delivered right to my door. It is just, I absolutely loved it when she brought it. I looked at her and I said, this belongs in a museum. The problem is it is truly from the period. There's like horsehair and giant springs on the bottom side of that, and so you can't sit on it. I've tried. I broke it. So it's just a decoration piece now. I stay in a lot of hotel rooms. For a long time, I spent majority of my nights in a hotel room. So I love having a little, please do not disturb, please make up the room sign on my door. So my little sheepskin rug, though you can find these everywhere, mine happens to be from Romania. I was on a 2-week road trip through Romania with these local friends, and we were driving the Transfragosh one, which I probably just pronounced somewhat incorrectly. Very, very difficult. But it was this amazing road, and we were on this beautiful trip, and we stopped, and they had this little like stall selling these amazing, like, quality sheepskin rugs. And they were so affordable. And I said, I want one of those. I have to have one. I was married at the time. And my husband was like, what are you going to do with that? And I said, I don't know, but I have to have it. And I put my foot down and I bought this souvenir. For the longest time, I would always want these souvenirs, but have nowhere to put them. I put my foot down. I bought the souvenir. And it is one of the only things from that period of my life and all those travels that made it into this apartment. But I knew I had a vision for it that day, and my little Romanian sheepskin rug is now here in Paris. And Miette loves it. Home to me truly just means where you feel at ease, like where you walk in the door and you feel this sigh of relief. And I truly never felt that in anywhere that I called home before I had this home. It's a true reflection of me, and I think that's what allows me to walk in the door and feel at ease and at home and happy, is that I look around and it's really something I built for myself, and it feels like me and it looks like me, and I feel at ease there. So what sold me most on this apartment, which I knew needed so much work, but when I walked in and opened these doors and stepped out on to this balcony, which goes all the way around the apartment. It's called a balcon filant. I just spent the first 5 minutes of my viewing of the apartment walking up and down going, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. And I still pretty much do that most days, but this is my favorite little corner of the balcony. I come out here any day that it's warm enough and sit. I have my coffee out here, I have lunch out here, I work out here in the summer, and this is probably the spot in the apartment most that I really feel like, wow, I live in Paris. Thank you so much for coming over. I love showing you my apartment, and I hope I see you soon in Paris.
Hi, Homeworthy. I'm Claudia. Welcome to my studio apartment in Brooklyn, New York. Come on in.
You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
Before today's episode, click the join button below to support all of the storytelling we do on this channel. Our growing community of members help to directly fund more videos so we can capture these extraordinary homes from around the world. So join today to receive early and exclusive access to new Homeworthy videos.
Hi, my name is Claudia Williams. I'm a freelance writer and content creator living in Brooklyn, New York, and today we are in my roughly 400 square foot studio apartment. So I've been living in Brooklyn for 4 years, and I had had roommates the entire time, and in September my lease was up and I was ready to live alone. I wanted to get a cat, but if you've ever lived in New York or roughly anywhere in the world, you know that September is kind of the trickiest time of year to move. It's like a cutthroat experience, so I decided that instead of immediately moving into a new apartment, I was going to put my stuff into storage and travel a bit. I'm a freelancer, so I really had no reason not to, so I put everything in storage and I went to England for 2 months, and I lived in London with a stranger. We wound up becoming really great friends, and then at the end of the trip I did a road trip through the Cotswolds and Dorset and went to antique malls and flea markets and took baths twice a day and read by the fireplace, and it was so idyllic. But in the back of my mind the entire time I knew I was going to be going back to New York and needed an apartment. So at the beginning of the trip, I had hired a broker. Her name is Naomi Steinberg, and she went to apartment viewings for me, and we would FaceTime, and I swear I talked to her more than I talked to my mother on that trip, because it was every day. I was on Street Easy looking for apartments constantly, and being a freelancer with a single income, landlords just did not like me. So I got declined from, I think, 15 or 20 apartments while I was in England, and so I was just like so stressed, and I thought, okay, I'll go back to New York and hopefully when I'm there it becomes easier. And so I got back and I stayed with friends, and I would go to apartment viewings every day, and everything was just not it. It was either overpriced or like icky, and I was like, I'm not gonna put my heart and soul into an apartment I don't love. So I kind of decided, okay, maybe I'll move home for a while. It was just a really treacherous time in my life. And then one night at like midnight, I was on Street Easy, and I thought, what if I just raised my budget by $100 and just like, what if something was just a little bit over budget? And so I did that, and this apartment showed up, and the photos of it were really bad. A man had been living here, which he had bikes hanging from the ceiling. The walls were dark gray. He had tools everywhere, and it was just a really awful layout. But I noticed this mirror. It's a Pierre mirror. It's original to the house, and I immediately like gasped because all I wanted was an apartment with architecture and natural light. And so I emailed the broker, and she was like, can you come in the morning? And I came the next morning, met her, we became besties, and the guy who was living here was like, this is the best apartment I've ever lived in. The landlord's super kind. Utilities are included, it's rent stabilized, there's laundry in the basement, and I was just like, had tears in my eyes because I was so excited. And so I got the keys 2 weeks later, and still to this day cannot believe I live here because it's like the dream apartment, and I don't know how I got so lucky. But I firmly believe that all of the stress and apartment denials and just the waiting was worth it because I found this apartment, and so I like to think it was waiting for me. So here we are in like the living space of my apartment. These are the bookshelves, my pride and joy. They only cost about $120 to make. So if you're considering installing bookshelves into your apartment, let me tell you, it is a lot easier and cheaper than you'd think. I am a big fan of historical fiction, so a lot of the books I have are either some form of romance, fiction about like the war. I love a spy novel, things like that. Some of my favorite books in my collection are ones I bought in the Cotswolds. So this is an entire book about old English country houses, and it's just like the most beautiful book. I think I bought probably 15 books while I was in England, so my suitcase was overweight and I had to pay $100 to bring it home, which was probably not my best move, but alas, what are you gonna do? And then I am a huge fan of these terracotta pictures. This one I bought recently on a trip upstate. It's French, and I have about 6 or so of them. I love that they don't all match, but they all kind of tell a story. So you can see I have one up there that I got in Florida, of all places. And then both of those I bought in New York. One of them I found on a street. Someone was selling it on their curb, which is hilarious, only in New York. And then, yeah, I have a lot of cute little books that I've just collected through the years. Sometimes I buy a book, even if it's in a foreign language, because I think it's cute. This one is entirely in German. I have no idea what it says, but I love the way it looks. So, you know, some things are more for looks than for practicality, and that's okay too. And a lot of the art that I have in the apartment, I have found throughout my travels. I found this one at a flea market in Spain, and it actually went missing for 3 years while I was in New York. I couldn't find it, and then I found it literally like tucked away in the back of a closet in my last apartment on move-out day, and that was exhilarating. This is kind of a fun piece. This I found on the street, and it is filled with my matchbook collection. I have a ton of matches from restaurants throughout New York. I kind of just steal them wherever I go. This one's from Boston. And this is filled to the brim with matches. Some of them are also my dad's. He collected matches as well. One of my favorite things is I found a matchbook of his with a woman's phone number on it, which is a little bit scandalous. So if I had to pick one area of the apartment that I feel like really embodies like who I am and like my design style, it would definitely be my bookshelf. Everything I have on there is something that I love with all my heart. If this apartment set on fire, I would try and take everything on the bookshelf with me. And so I think about the bookshelves look kind of cluttered, but they're very curated and everything has a place, and I just keep adding to it when I find treasures that speak to me. And I've always dreamed of a bookcase with everything I love on it. So every time I sit on the couch and watch a movie or read, just looking at that bookcase that goes up 12 feet brings me immense joy. And then when I finish a book, I get to get on a ladder because they're 12 foot tall, climb up to the top and put the book on the top shelf, because I have a system where books on the top shelves I've read, books on the bottom shelves I haven't read, so it's easily grabbable. And yeah, the other highlight of this corner of the apartment is the original shutters. They open and close, so it's kind of my morning ritual with Stanley. I'll wake up in the morning and immediately open the shutters because he loves to see outside and chirp with the birds. They have like this amazing opening and closing and the original locks on them. And so it's great for privacy, great for blocking out the sun if I'm having a cozy movie day. And yeah, they're just stunning, and it makes for a great little place for a cat to hang out. He's very happy here. So this chair has been in my family for 125 years. But this pillow is actually an Indian block printed pillow that I got from Lulu in Georgia, but it has kind of an antique feel to it. So this is one of the newer things in my apartment, but it's actually, I feel like it looks collected and like I've gotten it on like some of my travels, which I really look for in a piece. So when I moved into this apartment in November, it had these very blah chandeliers that I just felt like didn't do the apartment justice. And I waited 6 months to find the right chandeliers, and they're from a brand out of England called Pookie. And they are absolutely stunning. And what really like drew my eye to them were the shades on all of the light bulbs. They're made with Morris & Co. linen fabric and have this silk yellow interior that when you turn them on, it just warms up the room. I'm not usually an overhead lighting person. I am a big fan of lamps, but these chandeliers have kind of changed that for me. When you turn them on, they're like so warm and make the room feel just really grand, and I feel it kind of highlights all of the details. The mirror, the way the light reflects off the mirror is super special. And the brand also sent me a really great lamp for my desk, which is also made of Morris & Co. linen fabric. And I just love the kind of English, cottagey, but also refined feel that they have to them. And I will be taking these with me when I move out. I kept the original chandeliers. They're hiding in a closet. And so I'm sorry to my landlord, but these will be coming with me. So here we have the pièce de résistance. This is the original Pierre mirror. It goes all the way up to the ceiling, which makes for a really fun Windexing and dusting experience. I have to crawl on a ladder. And I, to this day, just cannot believe I have this in my apartment. I feel like, it makes the space feel so much longer and kind of, you know, brings your eye up and is just a stunning thing to look at, but it's also extremely practical because I didn't have to buy a floor-length mirror when I moved in. And so yeah, this would have been the original parlor room where the family who lived in the brownstone would have like received guests and had a grand old time. And now I get to watch You've Got Mail while hanging out on my couch and looking at it. Have a house scent? I didn't think so, at least. And then the other day I was talking to a friend of mine and I was saying, I really wish my apartment had a signature scent. And she looked at me and she was like, it does. And I'm not sure what that is. It must just be a culmination of the various candles I'm burning. This candle is from a really old pharmacy in the West Village called C.O. Bigelow. They use their original like packaging for their candles, which I think is just so amazing. So it kind of goes into the antique inspired feel that I love in this apartment. And then this candlestick is actually my grandma's. I remember it being in her guest bedroom when I was little. We'd have sleepovers. And one of my favorite things about it is you can raise or lower the candle. I'm probably not going to do it right now because the candle's lit. It's really special. I don't even know how old this thing is. And it also came with a wick cutter, so once the candle's done burning, you can chop the wick off. And this is one of my favorite little vignettes in the whole apartment. So now we are kind of migrating into the living area and where I spend a majority of my time with this guy. His name is Stanley. Hello. But I call him Boozles because I don't think anybody calls their cat by their real name. This sofa is the comfiest thing I've ever sat on. It's an IKEA sofa that I got on Facebook Marketplace. I never thought I'd have a white couch because I'm quite prone to spills, but so far we're doing well. I just have a bleach pen on hand at all times. And then I put this cute little quilt down for Stanley to sleep on. This quilt I actually found on the streets of New York on a railing outside of an apartment, and I went home and washed it, obviously. I think one of my favorite things in the living area would have to be these curtains, which I made. You might be able to tell because they're a little bit wonky, but my best friend growing up, Marina, her grandma was a huge sewer and like a really talented seamstress, and she passed away recently, and Marina went into her sewing room and took piles of fabric and picked out ones that she thought I would like, and I brought them back and made a curtain out of it. So this is kind of an homage to my friend Marina's grandma Peggy, which is really sweet. And yeah, they're a little bit wonky, but you know, I like that they add character. And he likes to peek out the windows. Hello. So because the space is kind of tight, I don't have like a proper end table. And this stool belonged to my dad. I think it's Chinese, and it's hundreds of years old, and it has this beautiful mother of pearl inlay on it, and it can double as like a place to put my coffee. I can put my feet up. I also use it when I have friends over for dinner as a dining little stool. It's usually where I sit because it's not the most comfortable, but I just love the floral pattern on it and how it adds kind of a whimsical, warm feel to the room. I can honestly say there are no challenges that have come with living in a studio apartment. I feel like I've laid the space out so perfectly, and I also live alone. It's just me and my cat Stanley. And the 12-foot ceilings of the apartment really make it feel big, and the windows let in so much light. There's also a front porch where I have a dining table so my friends and I can eat outside, and the desk behind me also doubles as a dining table. So I've truly never run into any issues living in a studio. I think from an outsider's perspective, like my family who live in, 5-bedroom homes in Illinois, look at a studio and think, how could you ever live in there? But in New York, you just kind of you fine-tune your belongings and your lifestyle to fit the space. I don't have anything in excess. Everything I have is for a reason. I've purged a lot throughout the years. And so I kind of love living in a studio. I love that I get to see everything all the time. If I lived in a big house, I wouldn't get to see everything I love. And yeah, it's very cozy in here. It's very intimate, and I plan to live here for eternity. Probably not, but I would if I could. So now we are kind of segueing into my bedroom, or my area of slumber. Because this is a studio, there's not a real defining line between bedroom and living room. So I found this stunning antique room divider on a road trip to Cape Cod. I think it has to be hundreds of years old, maybe it's not, but I found it in a dressing room. And I asked the woman at the front desk, I was like, is that for sale? And she said, no. And I said, would you reconsider? And so she said, if I can find another room divider in the basement that I can use in its place, you can buy it. So I bought this even before I knew that I was moving out of my apartment, just because I knew one day I was gonna live alone in a studio most likely, and I would need it. So she finally has her moment to shine, and she defines the living room and the bedroom, and I also use her to hang clothes on. And so she kind of gets cluttered throughout the week, but she's doing her job, and I love her. So we're segueing into the slumber area. One of my favorite pieces is this dresser that I got on Facebook Marketplace a few years ago. The owners of it actually hand delivered it to me and carried it up the stairs, and they were like emotional getting rid of it because they loved it so much, but they just didn't have space for it anymore. It's made out of English pine, and it has these original knobs that I love. And the joinery, the woodwork is amazing. Like, people just do not make stuff like this anymore, you know? And so she doubles as a nightstand, and I have this little basket hanging with like my little hand creams and my chapsticks, just, you know, things you need before bed. And then hanging above the dresser is the painting that I had mentioned earlier that I saw at an antique store in upstate New York. It's hand painted on wood, and it was a little bit out of my budget, but so I didn't buy it immediately. And then for weeks afterwards, I just kept saying to myself, like, why didn't you buy the painting? And so I wound up emailing, and the owner of the painting mailed it to me. And her name is Clarice. I named her. And I don't know her story, but I feel like I should make one up for her because she's so elegant, and I love her hat, and her necklace is great as well. And yeah, these sconces are just for looks. They don't work. And I got these cute little sconce shades on a trip to Philly. But one day maybe I'll hardwire them so they actually turn on. But for now, I just like the way they look. And I like the way they kind of anchor my headboard as well, which is this beautiful upholstered headboard from Lulu in Georgia, and a really nice ochre and white stripe that matches everything else in my apartment that's yellow, including this gingham lampshade that I love. So I feel like there was a phase where everybody had white bedding, and then everybody decided white bedding was kind of dull, and I am on that train. I really wanted like pattern, fun, kind of cottagey bedding, and this is from Piglet in Bed, which is an English brand, and I loved the gingham, and I kind of like the way that it highlights the pink bed skirt, which brings in the pink from the chair, and then I have some pinstriped cotton sheets from a brand called Koyuchi that are like hotel level soft. One day maybe I'll have white bedding again. I doubt it. I love just kind of playing with different textures and fabrics and having fun, especially living in a studio. When your bed is out for the world to see, you have to make it pretty, and you have to make it fun and match the vibe. And yeah, I really love this bedding. I dreamed of having a rug this color, and I just could not find it anywhere. And then I was working with Lulu in Georgia on the headboard, and I thought, do you have a rug that is this perfect shade of green? And it's actually vintage, handmade, and it's a stunning green color that I think pulls out perfectly from the other greens in my apartment. Everything feels really like nothing came together, but somehow feels like it was made for each other. The rug is my favorite thing in the apartment, and it's also Stanley's. He loves to get his nails in there, which is really bad for the rug, but you know, what are you gonna do? He's a cat, so. From the bedroom, you look directly at these stunning double doors, which sold me on the apartment. When I walked in the front door of the building, and she was like, that's the door of the apartment. I was like, you're kidding me. They are just amazing. The landlord restained them recently to match the other wood in the apartment, and just to like lay in bed at night and look at these doors is like a treat. I feel like I'm constantly like on a little English, you know, B&B escape in my own home, which I feel very blessed for. But yeah, they're grand. They make for a grand entrance. Everyone who comes over is like also like, those are your front doors, and I'm like, yeah, those are my front doors. So now we have my desk, which is a recent acquisition. I looked on Facebook Marketplace for 2 months trying to find a pine old desk that would fit this like perfect little nook. And I even went on a road trip to upstate New York looking for an antique desk and didn't find one. And then this man in Chelsea was selling this desk. The photos of it were bad. He had no measurements, he had no details, but I saw the potential, and so I went and picked it up, and it somehow like fit absolutely perfectly. And it does double duty as a dining table as well if I pull it out from the wall. And this chair is a Salvation Army find. It was $10. It's not the most comfortable chair, but she's doing the job for now. Maybe one day I'll get like an actual comfortable desk chair, but you know, sometimes aesthetics are more important than comfort. And this is a fun little curation of some of my favorite pieces of art. When I moved to New York, I had a few pieces of art, but nothing that I really loved. And this piece was the first painting I ever bought for myself, as opposed to, you know, stealing from my grandpa, who's an art collector. I found it at a store in Carroll Gardens. This is a etching of a famous church in Vienna. I studied abroad in Vienna in college, and I never bought a souvenir while I was over there, and I always regretted it. And I found this at Chelsea Flea Market for like 20 bucks, and I was like, that's the souvenir I never bought for myself. And then this is from my dad. It's missing the glass, but I kind of like the way it looks. And this is another one of those terracotta pictures that I collect. This is also a Chelsea Market find. Chelsea Flea Market is open on the weekends if you haven't been. That is where a lot of my good antiques come from. Not to give away all my secrets, but Chelsea Flea Market in Manhattan is great. And yeah, this gorgeous lamp is from the same brand who made my chandeliers, and she just adds a lot of coziness, and she also is made of that terracotta orange that I really like. So like I was saying, everything in my apartment has a story behind it. This sconce I got on my road trip in England, and my bag was so overweight with books that I had to take some stuff out and mail it home. And if you've never mailed anything home from England, the customs form, they take it so seriously, and I did not know that. So I shipped this home, some heavy sweaters and like some tea, but somehow the box made it to me 2 months later. So this was a sort of, you know, a long-awaited piece to hang on my wall. And then these candlesticks I also got in England, and they're like perfectly tiny. And it just makes my heart happy just to have a little heart sconce. So yeah, that was a bit of a process to get that candlestick here. So I needed some extra storage in this apartment, and I wanted a piece that had some character to it. And I found this on Facebook Marketplace, and it was 2 blocks away, so I just carried it home. It's really heavy. But it was this sort of boring, creamy white color. And I had just visited the Betsy Ross house in Philadelphia, the woman who made the first American flag. And the molding of her house had this minty, perfect green. And I took photos of it and brought it to the hardware store and had them match it. So this is Betsy Ross green. And I painted it and probably didn't even let it dry properly before I started decorating it because I was so excited. And on it is my collection of miniature milk creamers. So I have the big ones on the bookshelf, but then I also like to collect these really tiny ones. I make a lot of coffee at home and film like coffee content. And so I bought these as kind of like a way to pour your milk and just make it look really cute. And then I got hooked on collecting them. And so now when my friends go on trips, they buy me them. So my friend just went to Mexico and bought me this one. I love this guy. They're just kind of silly and make my heart happy. And then this is another find I got on a trip to the Netherlands. It's a French brand or French maker. And it has this cute little guy on it with cute little pants. So, and these are my cookbooks. I have some vintage cookbooks. And this is a cookbook that belonged to my dad. It's like a tiki drink, a famous tiki drink place. And it's a bartender's guide to making cocktails. I would consider my apartment like traditional eclectic. It's kind of curated and cluttered and collected, but also very refined, and everything is really intentional. And mostly everything in the apartment is antique or secondhand. I can probably count on my 10 fingers how many things in the apartment are new. A lot of things are gifted from grandparents or my parents. I found a lot of things at flea markets or antique stores. I found some stuff on the street, Facebook Marketplace. If I could spend every day of my life thrifting or going to flea markets, I would. I never get sick of it. And so that's kind of what I just look for pieces that speak to me or have a story. Ideally, everything I buy, I will have forever. And yeah, I think traditional eclectic. I also like to call this apartment my urban cottage. I feel sometimes when I'm at home, I put on like the fireplace on my TV and have a cup of tea and pretend I'm in England again, and it's not that far off. here we head into the bathroom. It's kind of just your typical New York bathroom, but I wanted to add some character to it. If you'll notice, I clearly like floral yellow fabric. So from the time I got the apartment to moving in, I had a week, and I didn't want to buy any furniture because I didn't know what I would need. So I started hyper-fixating on getting a shower curtain, and I couldn't find one anywhere that I liked online. So my friend Shay decided she was going to make one for me. And we went to a few fabric stores in the city, and I just didn't find any fabric I liked. And then we thought, what if we get a tablecloth? And so I went to this store in Cobble Hill called 21 Terra, and I bought this Indian block printed tablecloth, and then my friend Shay sewed it into a shower curtain. And shower curtains are like the focal point of a bathroom. They take up so much visual space. So I was like, I want to love the shower curtain. And I think it's so special. I love the tulips on it. Tulips are my favorite flower. And now I get to match my shower curtain. And yeah, it's pretty compact, but I feel like I've made it work. I installed these pegs that kind of, I hang my towels, my glasses, little baskets, and then some found art that I got in the city at Housing Works, which is a great thrift store. And yeah, the ceilings are tall in here as well, which makes it feel bigger. I really love this bathroom, despite it being quite compact. It's really cozy. Everything in this apartment, like I was saying, is found or thrifted, and this was a Facebook Marketplace find. It was $60, and I had the girl Uber package it to me, so it just showed up on my doorstep, and it is the perfect storage little guy, and it's come with me to 2 different apartments now, and I feel like I'll have her forever, and she'll just kind of wear many hats and serve different purposes throughout her life. This is my little bowl of bars of soap, because I love bars of soap. And just these are my grandma's, the same grandma who had the candlestick, and she downsized recently and held on to a bunch of stuff for me that she thought I would like, and so now I get to put them in my apartment, which is really special. And the lamp, I'm not a big overhead lighting person, so I don't ever turn the light on in the bathroom. I just turn this little lamp on. And if you've ever driven by a house at Christmas time and noticed all of those candles in the windows, this is what that is. I got it for $1 at a thrift store, and it's supposed to be like, in the window, and then I just put a little lampshade on it, and it makes for a really cozy showering experience as opposed to like the bright overhead light, which I do not like. Just never turn that on. So I am a freelance writer and content creator. So currently I'm working on some stories for Architectural Digest focused around historic homes, which is my dream. I recently did a story on Biltmore, and I'm working on a piece on Mount Vernon, which is George Washington's estate. And then as a content creator, I love to make videos in my home. I love highlighting kind of like slow living, waking up with like having a cup of coffee and a book. And now that I've moved into this apartment, I've really pivoted towards interiors as well. So I make a lot of content around decorating, before and after videos, DIYs and stuff like that. So I kind of just wear a lot of hats. As a content creator and writer, I feel like I really get to exercise my creativity and kind of just like go where the wind takes me, which I'm very blessed to be able to do. And creating content in this beautiful home and writing about historic homes is just like my dream job, so I'm very lucky. So now we are moving into my kitchen. It's pretty small by most people's standards, but for me it does the job and it's perfect. I covered the counters in this peel and stick paper, which took a lot of trial and error, but once I got it down, I feel like it makes a world of a difference. I had considered painting the cabinets, but it's so much work to paint cabinets, and I kind of like the wood. I feel like the kitchen is really cozy and warm, and I was like, why am I going to paint the cabinets? So I just didn't, and I kind of like the way it looked. One thing that I've done that I really love is I hung art on the backsplash. I think that's becoming more and more common these days, but this piece of art I had nowhere to put in the living room. And I was like, what if I just hung it in the kitchen? So I got like a command hook and I hung that there. And I like the way it looks and kind of makes the corner feel special. Like, I think a kitchen can be, it doesn't have to feel like a kitchen. It can be another warm, cozy place to hang out. And I feel like this kitchen is very much that. All of these little things I found, you know, thrift stores. I love all these wooden spoons. And again, this is another one of those little miniature lamps. I cook in the dark because I don't like overhead lighting, but you know, it's the price you pay. So the newest addition to this kitchen is this light. I had fallen in love with a light similar to this on Pinterest, but it was multi-hundreds of dollars and I just was not prepared to spend that. And the friend who made the shower curtain, my friend Shay, once again, she's very talented. She was like, I will make you that light. And so I got another block printed tablecloth and we went to town and made it in the span of probably a week. She made most of it. I kind of just like encouraged and helped where I could. And then she installed it and I just am obsessed with it. No one has one. It's completely, you know, it's an original Shay creation. And I like the way that it pulls in green from the rest of the apartment and adds a little sort of whimsical touch. Yeah, I still don't turn her on that often because I like the intimacy of the lamps, but I feel like she's more like a piece of art than a light, and I just adore her. And then because the counter space is sort of limited in the kitchen, I built this kind of rolling skirted table moment. And I got this fabric from a flea market in London. It's French cotton. And I just put a piece of wood on this like tiny little table, skirted it, stained the wood, and then hung this directly above it. This was a find from a junk store in Williamsburg. And I feel like it almost looks kind of built in and looks very like shaker inspired. The hooks are really functional. I can grab whatever I need. All of my linen napkins that I found. I love collecting linens. These are all, I bring them out for my dinner parties. I'm kind of anti-paper towel, anti-paper napkin. And yeah, I have, you know, my granola, my coffee, my tea. This is kind of where I make my morning coffee. I love to cook. I'm not very inventive. I grew up with an Italian grandma, so I'm used to eating a lot of pasta, garlic, lemon. My friends joke that every time they come over, I make them some variation of the same lemon chicken soup. And so I'm trying to kind of branch out a little bit, but I just make what, you know, feels right. I think my signature dish, besides the lemon chicken soup that everybody jokes about, is bolognese. I went to Bologna, Italy a few years ago and spent like a year trying to make the bolognese taste the same way that they made it. And I feel like I perfected it, and so that's what I make when guests are coming over and I know I want, like, I don't want to fail and try some weird new dish, so I just make bolognese and it never fails and it always tastes good. I also love to bake. I opened a bakery in my mom's kitchen during the pandemic called Claudette's, and I was making croissants, I was making banana bread, cookies. And so one day I hope to open a real bakery in upstate New York. That's kind of my retirement plan. But for now, I'm just baking for friends and making pasta and enjoying the small kitchen and making the most of it. I think home for me is not always a specific place. It's kind of more like a feeling of just like safety and comfort and warmth. I made this apartment my home. I think I could have done that anywhere. I'm glad it's this apartment because it's stunning. But one thing my mom reminded me of when I couldn't find an apartment, she was like, wherever you move, you will make it cute. You will make it your home. And so, yeah, I think home is what you make of it and what you fill a home with, like love, things you love, a cozy cat. And yeah, I think home is just your belongings, things you love, and cozy comfort.
Hi, Homeworthy. I'm Maggie. Welcome to my home in Rhinebeck, New York. Come on in, I'll show you around.
You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
Hi, I'm Maggie Pouncey, and I'm an author. We are in Rhinebeck, New York, in the Hudson Valley, and my house is a 1840s farmhouse that has been added on to over the years, but still has a lot of the old elements. I moved to New York City for college and had lived there my whole adult life, and I owned a children's bookshop in Brooklyn, and I have two sons who were going to school there, and kind of imagined that I would live in New York City my whole life. It sort of becomes a big part of your identity, being a New Yorker. But when the pandemic happened, we decided to close our bookshop. It sort of opened up this new realm of possibility for us. So in 2021, we sort of said, what if we moved to the country? Just sort of exploring that possibility. And we looked at a few real estate listings, and we saw this house, and we went to see it, and that was kind of it. We just fell in love. I came to see it on this extremely gloomy February day. It still had this kind of warmth and light about it, and sort of just knew it was it. So we didn't look at any other houses. Maybe the house sort of chose us. It had been on the market a while. So then we moved in the summer of 2021. Welcome to the entryway. This is the original part of the house. You can see from the old floorboards. This is where people used to enter the house. Now we enter through the side often, but it's lovely to have this door open and to sort of let the light in from the outside. This bookshelf over here was something my husband and I got at a flea market in New York City, and we lived in a very tiny apartment and we needed a very narrow bookshelf, and we found it, and it's still with us here. Because I'm a writer and a former bookshop owner, there's books in pretty much every room of the house. I just see them as just part of life in the house, like having art. So we have some travel books, some puzzles, some games for the kids. This piece of art, this beautiful textile of Venice, was my mom's, one of the things I got from her. And I got many things from my mother, my grandmother on that side, and even my great-grandmother. So she's kind of the matriarch. And this is her, Carrie, from her husband, Arturo. So we sort of have the matriarch protecting the home here. I have sort of always thought of myself as a writer. I loved writing as a kid, and I studied writing in college and graduate school. And I started out writing fiction for adults, and I published a novel called Perfect Reader, which came out when my son Felix was a baby. When he was really small, I was really discovering the world of children's books kind of published more recently. And it's just such a beautiful age of children's books right now. And so I had loved the genre as a child, but loved it in a new way as an adult. And so that inspired me to open our bookshop, which was called Stories Bookshop and Storytelling Lab in Brooklyn. So while running the shop, I also started writing children's books. So I have a picture book called A Fort on the Moon that was inspired by watching my two sons, Felix and Dominic, at play. And I have a few more in the works coming out down the line. So we'll go this way into the living room. And here we are in the living room. One of the newest parts of our home is this Murano chandelier. My husband very painstakingly reassembled recently. I just can't get over the detail and artistry of it. We got it from this amazing place called Hudson Valley House Parts, which is in Newburgh, New York. And basically they are salvage shop. When homes are being like gut renovated, they go in and they save windows and doors and chandeliers. And a funny story about it is it came in like a million boxes and pieces, and it was a little daunting. And so I wrote to them and I was like, any guidance? And they said, oh, any clever person can figure out how to assemble it. So there is a lot of pink in this house. I was really feeling pink when we moved in. We didn't do that much work to the house when we moved in. We refinished the floors and we painted. And so you'll see there's kind of a few shades of pink. around the house. And what I really love about this pink is that it sort of becomes almost a neutral. I feel like art looks really pretty against it, and you almost just don't notice it at a certain point, but it is definitely pink. This dresser, I bought this at a vintage shop in Brooklyn, and it had different knobs. It had these kind of big black knobs, and I think that is such a fun thing to do, is buy new knobs for things. Like little tiny changes you can make, I think make huge differences. We did it on some of the built-in millwork in the house. We just changed the knobs, and it just kind of makes it feel fresh and kind of prettied up. This chair was in my family home growing up, the Spentwood rocker. I've been thinking a lot about sort of, family heirlooms and kind of integrating them into your own style, right? Because I have a lot of these items, and it can feel a little weighty, I think, like the sort of the past, and it was your parents' aesthetic and maybe your grandparents. So I do really love preserving these things, but I also think it's important to give yourself license to part with things if they don't feel quite right. When I reupholstered this chair, I gave that guy a little new pillow. I really love using books as decor, but also books that are fun to read and interesting. And we sort of have a mix here of children's books, design books, books for grown-ups, film, art. I really love children's picture books, and I also really love design books, and they're both picture books really in a sense. So you'll see a lot of those there, and I hope that when people come and hang out in our living room, they'll sort of say like, oh, that's interesting. Let me just kind of page through that. And we have some games too. This is a game where you do little jumps and you try to only have one left. It's very difficult. And we have a puzzle with different kind of woodland creatures that is also really fun to do. And so like my kids, when they have friends over, come and, sit in the living room and do these little puzzles. This painting over the fireplace is by an artist named Emily Mason. Parents, when I was a kid, befriended her and her husband, Wolf Kahn. And we have a painting on the other side of the room by Wolf Kahn. And then when my parents got divorced, my mother got Emily Mason's painting and my dad got Wolf Kahn's painting. And now I think it's kind of this beautiful metaphor that they're reunited in my living room. And I just think the colors are incredible. It kind of makes me feel like it's like an underwater portal, but kind of a fun thing to kind of imagine these paintings across the room greeting each other in reunion. I really love rearranging furniture. I think it's like one of the best ways to sort of redesign your home without spending any money. And there's always things that I'm moving around. This area has kind of changed a lot. The art has moved around on the walls. And I also think it's really good to kind of take that energy of trial and error into your home and sort of figure out like, where does this object want to be? This piano was actually in a house that friends of ours in Brooklyn bought. It was upstairs in the house, and they already had a piano. So they asked us, do you want a piano? And I think it's a good rule in life, if someone offers you a free piano, that you should say yes. So that's how we ended up with our piano. It's so nice when someone comes over who plays the piano and sits and plays for everyone. It's a real treat. This beautiful photograph is taken by my friend John Pack. He did this very cool photography project called the Olympic City. They went to former sites of the Olympics and photographed them and sort of saw how these spots that were kind of made at great expense for the Olympics were being used by these cities after the fact. So this is Barcelona. There's lots of different kind of areas to read. That's encouraged a lot. So lamps and cozy chairs and tables for your tea. And lots of artwork also by my children. My son Felix made this incredible creature. I'm not exactly sure. Lizardy, dinosaur, amazing scales. Anyway, this was by Felix, and actually this is a whole Felix area. He made this vase and this box. So I really like that maybe it's high-low element, or maybe it's just all of it is art, right? That things that you make as a kid are just as creative and wonderful. I really love this room that we're sitting in, the living room. I was really daunted by it because it's a large space. It's bigger than the sort of main living space of our Brooklyn home. So when we first moved in, it was like very minimalist, not intentionally, but just we had to sort of find more furniture over time to fill it with. It was really kind of a fun challenge to think about how to make it feel like one cohesive space, but also kind of some cozier nooks, which I always really like. And I feel like it has this feeling that I'm always looking for in a house, which is kind of different from like how it looks or what you do in the space, but sort of like how it makes you feel when you enter it. And I feel like I've really tried to create this kind of inviting warmth about the space, and over time we're getting there. I was thinking also about how I love to have books in every room. You know, we all are big readers, but books also can be kind of this heavy energy. So I'm always kind of fiddling and moving them around. And I like that over here right now, I have a real mix of children's books, adult books. My dad passed away a year ago and I inherited all of his books. A history of philosophy, for instance. He was a professor of classics, so those are his. And I'm not 100% sure any of us are going to pick up Hobbes to Hume, volume 5 of that book, but I really love having them there, right? Because I think that books also kind of work in that way, that they're like a piece of your history, a piece of your family, like you can remember where you were when you read something or what something meant to you or to someone else. This ottoman I got from an amazing shop actually right here called Hammertown, and they use vintage Turkish rugs to cover these ottomans. This used to live in my study, and I recently moved it here. We had a much smaller little table, but it's really nice because now I have room for the chessboard and the chess pieces, so my kids will come and play chess here. So in our house in Brooklyn, it was actually probably from about the same time period as this house, which is kind of interesting. It was a small red brick house in Clinton Hill. We were renters, so there was a limit to sort of what we could do with the space, but the main living area was smaller than this room that we're in, and it had the kitchen, the dining room, living room area all together. And the four of us, our family of four, were in this room all the time. It felt like we were just in this one room all the time. So it had to be very multi-use, and it also often felt like my kids were younger then, so it felt, you know, there were markers and magnetiles and blocks everywhere and children's books, and it was very colorful and I think kind of slightly more chaotic, because one of the nice things, having a bigger space can be a bit forgiving because kind of absorbs your stuff of life a little more. I was a little worried when we moved, especially because we had lived through lockdown in this space, and I thought, oh no, we'll all be so spread out, but actually we're all sort of hanging out in little cozy nooks all the time. It doesn't really matter. But I would say that I've been able to be a bit more intentional about the design of this and sort of take my time. It's been kind of a more leisurely moment in my life, I think, than when I was making the Brooklyn home. And I think also that having Stories, our bookshop, and designing that space really taught me a lot about thinking about how you want people to feel in a space and how you want people to use the space. And so I think that has really, I loved that process of building Stories. It was really one of my favorite parts of the whole experience. And I think I've been able to use that experience in this house. And now I'd love to take you to the dining room. Welcome to the dining room. We have dinner in here pretty much every night. So I really wanted this space to feel kind of serene and quiet. It's not pink. It's the only room in the house that is not a color. I mean, it's white. That was intentional. And we like to light the candles at night. That was something we sort of started during lockdown, where we would light the candles and say, we're having a dinner party. And it's one of those things where you do sort of feel like you're having a moment, right, when you light the candles. So I try to do that every night. This table was a wedding present from my mom and stepdad. And I mean, first of all, what a great wedding present. But it's been through a lot. It was in that sort of main room of our house in Brooklyn. So it has been used for many art projects, homework, lots of wear and tear, but I think it just sort of gets more beautiful, the more worn it gets. Some of these chairs, the head of the table and the foot of the table, these were my mom that have found a home here, and these are vintage Danish chairs that I found online. I love this sort of feeling of all the browns of the wood with the white. I think there's something so peaceful about it. This built-in was here when we moved in. Actually, the previous owners had a wild collection of birdhouses that was here, which was kind of fantastic. But I've used it for family photos, which is so nice to have. There's so many good services online where you can just send a digital photo and they'll frame it for you and send it, which is so nice because I think we live in this age where we take so many more family photos or photos in general, but they all live on our little rectangles that we carry around. And so to frame them and put them about is very satisfying. So family photos from trips. This is me and my husband Matt in our bookstore, and I like it next to this print by the artist, author and illustrator, and gave that to us as at the first anniversary of the bookshop. So kind of make a cute pair. And this is from my book, A Fort on the Moon. The illustrator, Larry Day, sort of the process when you're making a picture book is you make these kind of thumbnail sketches to get a sense of how the book will lay out. So this is one of his thumbnails of a scene from the book where the two brothers are lying in bed before they go to the moon. And it's very cute. They're wearing bike helmets because safety first for your moon expedition. That detail actually didn't make it into the book. In the final illustration, the helmets are hanging from the bed, but I just love that they're wearing their bike helmets in bed. So I have also some photos of my dad who passed away from my husband's grandparents. So it's also sort of our ancestors kind of looking down on us and protecting us, and while we have our nightly ritual of dinner. So this light fixture is by Workstead. They're interior designers and they make beautiful lighting. I love it so much. There's something about the color of the brass and the color of this rug. Actually, this is from Armadillo. They make a lot of sort of very simple but kind of luxurious feeling jute or natural fiber rugs, and it's very forgiving. Our dogs are just constantly scratching it or shedding on it or whatever, so it really is a great family rug. And there's something about all these kind of colors and textures I find very satisfying together. And I do feel like I like that it feels kind of different from the rest of the house, and it is kind of where we end the day as a family. It kind of sets the mood for like we're quieting down, we're connecting, we're resting. So this is a pass-through into the kitchen. I imagine that in an earlier version of the house, maybe the intention was that someone else was preparing a meal and could sort of send it through here. We call it the portal. And when we first moved in, my son Dominic was smaller and liked to sort of sit in here and read or draw. He's now my size, so it's a little trickier, but still occasionally he'll launch through into the kitchen just for fun, because how could you not when you have a portal? You gotta use it. We were, of course, really sad to leave Brooklyn. We had such a great community there, and my boys had never lived anywhere else. It was sad to say goodbye, but it was a really gentle landing here in Rhinebeck. We all sort of found our community pretty quickly, and I have really been surprised by how much I love living somewhere with such natural beauty. I mean, that seems like a pretty obvious thing to love, but I think when you're a city dweller, you sort of kind of forget that that's something humans need. And so, you know, I feel like we live in such a beautiful spot, and I take my dogs for walks every day and see the Catskills and the river, and I really feel like I kind of need that now in a way that I maybe didn't even know when I was living in the city. So the dining room leads right into my study, so let's head into the study. Welcome to the study. I'm very lucky as a writer to have a room of my own, and this is a space that I use for when I sort of need a little quiet, for writing, for working. I have all my fiction and memoirs here on these bookshelves. We were very lucky that these built-ins were here when we moved in. And sort of had the right amount of book space for all of our books. It's really great to have this little library, kind of think of it as a library in addition to a study, this sweet fireplace. We actually think this, and my husband's study, this part of the house was actually even a little bit older. And if you look at the floors, the floorboards go this way here, and then the other way in the dining room. So maybe this was like a little tiny cottage that was kind of added on to soon after it was built. But it has like lower ceilings. It has like a very cozy, quiet essence to it, and it has the darkest pink. We have in the entryway, we have kind of the palest, the living room gets a little darker, and then in here kind of a deeper pink. And I love to light a fire in the winter and sit in here and read or write or play around with words a bit, and have some photographs, old family photographs, my grandmother's when they were little, and a picture of me with my dad when I was little. I've been really interested in, because as a children's book writer, kind of keeping this idea of myself as a little kid as kind of the person I'm writing for in a certain way. Like, would she think this is silly? Would she think this is fun? So I have my paternal and maternal grandmothers as kids too, to sort of be like, okay, think about these guys. Kind of tucked away in the corner, I have this sign from our bookshop, Stories, which maybe one day I'll mount somewhere, but there is our logo, which is sweet to have its presence here still. The couch actually can fold out as a bed, so it can be this can become a guest room if we need it to, which is nice. This pillow is from Block Shop Textiles. They make really gorgeous pillows and rugs and table linens. Rocker I got at a vintage shop in Hudson, New York a long time ago, and it was painted orange, which is kind of wonderful. So this room has become kind of the red and orange room. Somehow in this small space, these kind of warm colors make it work in a way, which is adds to the kind of cozy vibe. Kind of a mood board over here with different things that are inspiring me. Some more pictures of myself when I was little, pictures of my kids when they were little, some of the things we created for Stories, stickers. This Lori Richmond, an illustrator, made this beautiful illustration, watercolor, of our shop. This is the facade of the shop, so I have that. And another Fort on the Moon by Larry Day illustration. And my mom made the cover in felt, of course. Gotta make it in felt. And this is my older son Felix had to write a 6-word memoir. So my brother, sometimes annoying, always fun. Which, you know, high praise from an older brother, actually. If you're always fun, you're definitely winning. One of the things we really loved about this house right away is situated sort of on an east-west axis. So the sun rises on that side of the house and sets behind me on the other side of the house. So you can sort of follow it throughout the day and sort of find your spot. Especially the light coming through these old glass windows, which sort of have this like almost marbleized quality in some of the panes. I really think that my style is kind of a mix of opposites in a way. Like I have I really love some modern or contemporary pieces, but I also really love vintage and antiques, and I have a lot of family heirlooms that I've kind of scattered throughout the house from both sides of my family. And I feel like I really like things that feel really colorful and bright, but I also like things that feel kind of serene and calm. And I like the kind of farmhouse element of it, but I kind of like things to feel a tiny bit fancy. So it's kind of these opposites that I try to put together in a room that I think defines the look of it. Now I will bring you to the kitchen. Welcome to the kitchen. The previous owners really went for it with the yellow and red formica. It's definitely a vibe. I feel like half of my friends are like, this is the most amazing, you can never change it. And half of my friends are like, how do you live amid such bright color? And it definitely feels a little different than the rest of the house, but I have really gotten to love this kitchen. I really love that I feel like the owners of the house weren't really following a design trend. I feel like they were just following their bliss. Actually, you kind of do see a lot of yellow kitchens now, so, you know, maybe they were ahead of their time. And we do a lot of cooking in here. My husband is really the better, more serious cook, but I also like to cook. And the previous owners of the house also left us this incredible table, which is, I don't even know how many feet long. But when we made an offer on the house, the sort of first thing they said in response is, will they keep the table? And we didn't really know what the right answer to that question was, but we said, yes, we will keep the table, and we have. So this is homework, breakfast, just the mess of life, and it can really absorb it all. You can have a puzzle going on one side and still have space to sit and eat. I think we're having 15 people for Thanksgiving this year, so we'll sit in here. So it's kind of incredible to have this amount of table. And these chairs, it's very sweet. They were from the storytelling lab in our bookshop and stories, so we've brought them in here. So nice to remember. That have a lot of kid art around. Felix made the giraffe and Dominic made this cat who maybe also is a unicorn. We have books, because we have books in pretty much every room in the house, cookbooks and just some kind of books about food, and just stuff for the kids to make stuff. And yeah, so it really is such a great space for family life, just that you can sort of create a mess and then still sit at your table. This hutch we got at a vintage shop in Brooklyn, and it's been with us through many different homes. You know, I like that it sort of is maybe from around the time period of this house, and kind of goes with the floors in some way. So I feel like it was kind of meant to end up here, and it's just a very useful storage area too. Now let's go upstairs and I'll show you the primary bedroom. Before we head to the bedroom, I'll show you this little hangout nook. I love this space because it's sort of not a space. It could end up being just kind of landing, but we've been able to sort of create an extra room here, and we actually hang out here a lot sort of at the end of the evening. We listen to audiobooks here. We have a lot of fidgets so that you can fidget while you listen to your audiobook. We watch a movie. There's something about this kind of found space, which is kind of fun. We have these framed calendars from this was the month Dominic was born, July 2013 and February 2010 when Felix was born. It's this family that makes these beautiful calendars called the Dolphin Studio, and it's kind of a fun gift to give a framed, I think it's a fun birth gift. Actually, I gave it once to a friend too, of a framed calendar from the month someone was born. So we have those. We have the bean bags, which I kind of think of as minions. where usually the two dogs are sitting here and we're kind of competing for couch real estate. Yeah, so it's kind of a found space that is nice to have. And now let me show you the bedroom. Welcome to my bedroom. This room is not pink. It's this kind of blue-green that kind of changes color throughout the day, which is kind of fun. And as in the rest of the house, I have a lot of family stuff, newer pieces, vintage pieces that I found. This dresser in particular, this is where I have a lot of my clothes, is part of a set, and there's a sort of shorter dresser in my son Dominic's room, and this was my great-grandparents. So I imagine that they bought it in the early 1900s. It's like a big heavy piece. Sometimes I fantasize about painting it white, and maybe I will one day. I don't know if my great-grandmother would approve. This is one of the sort of older family pieces that I have. One really fun thing about this space is that these shades I had actually bought for our Brooklyn house, for the downstairs of our Brooklyn house, and I mismeasured. It was one of those services where you provide the measurements and they send you the shades, and I wasn't great at that task. So they were like a little bit too small and we never mounted them, but for some reason I kept them. And then uncannily, when we moved in, they fit perfectly in this room, which sort of made it all seem quite magical and meant to be. This rocking chair over here is actually something I picked out as a kid. I think I was about 8. My mom loved going to antique stores and flea markets, and I loved going with her, and it obviously made a big impression on me, as it's something I still love. But I saw this rocker, and I remember saying, it was in this like kind of deep red velvety upholstery, and it just seemed really glamorous to me. And I said to my mom, like, oh, can I have this chair, please? And she was like, you're 8, you don't need furniture. And I was like, why are you bringing me up to all these antique markets if I can never buy mine? And I promised to keep it forever. And see, I kept my word. We have the chair here. Acrylic nightstands are actually shelves, and I bought them originally for my kids' room because when you have picture books, they're so tall, it doesn't often fit well on normal bookshelves. So I had bought it for that, but now they have all my House and Garden and Architectural Digest and design magazines. And there's something nice, I think, having the clear acrylic when there's kind of this dark, heavy wood in the rest of the room. They're on wheels, they're super portable. So they've also had life in many rooms, but are working hard in here. This painting is by the artist Leanne Shapton, and she has written many really wonderful books that she also illustrates. She is currently the art director of the New York Review of Books, so has many different careers, but this was a series she did of floral arrangements, and it was like one of the sort of first pieces of art that I kind of bought for myself. When my novel came out, it was like my little present to myself. So I like having this little floral arrangement above the bed. This is from, I guess it was 2007, I think. The Venice Biennale had the work of Felix Gonzalez y Torres. His work, at least for this exhibit, was like piles of candy, and you could take the candy with you, or these like big pieces of paper that said different things on them, and you could take the paper with you. So you could bring the art with you, which was really amazing. And I took Memorial Day weekend because that is when my husband Matt and I got married. So I took the big piece of paper and folded it into my suitcase, and it got kind of mangled, but we still have a little bit preserved here. So Amanda Jane Jones is a really cool graphic designer working now, and I really love and admire. She's done a lot of books, different projects, and she made this homebody print, which just is so sunny and makes me so happy. And I think this is a period in my life where I'm really embracing home, so it's a good reminder to have in your bedroom. Yeah, this is where I want to be. think that home really means to me a feeling, how the people in the home are able to connect with one another, how you are able to connect with yourself. I really want my home to feel like a place where all the people and animals, we actually have a lot of animals too, we have 2 dogs and 2 cats, but everyone can sort of coexist and feel comfortable and also feel fully themselves. I feel like I think a lot about this home as being like my kids' childhood home, and I feel like there's kind of a built-in nostalgia to that idea. So I use that as kind of a guide for like, how do I want them to sort of obviously I can't control how they're going to feel, but ideally in a perfect world, like when someone says like, oh, what was your childhood home like? I just really want them to feel that it was this place of warmth and connection.
Today on Homeworthy, we're visiting the charming North London home of journalist Jess Alavi-Ellis. Continuously renovating her home, she has infused the lovely space with colors that evoke meaningful memories with her family and vintage treasures collected from her extensive travels. Enjoy! You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story. Before today's episode, click the join button below to support all of the storytelling we do on this channel. Our growing community of members help to directly fund more videos so we can capture these extraordinary homes from around the world. So join today to receive early and exclusive access to new Homeworthy videos.
Hi Homeworthy, I'm Jess Alavi-Ellis. Welcome to my home in North London. Come on in. Welcome to my hallway. This didn't have any original features left, and a big priority for us was to restore as many of the original features in the house as we could. So we went to the neighbours' houses and saw what cornicing they had. Oh, there's a cobweb there. Saw what cornicing they had and tried to match that exactly. And then we got hold of these really fun tiles, and we decided to lay them in block colours. So we have the yellow, we have the kind of teal, and then the white. And then that kind of made me panic about paint, but then we decided let's just go for it. So we've blocked it out. So we have this kind of sunshine entryway, which would be a bit overpowering if it was the whole thing, but because it's just hi, this is my front door. We have this sunshine bit, this blue bit, and then the rest is neutral, so you don't feel like you're gonna get a headache. I got this Murano light from auction. I am really into buying from auction sites, buying from vintage markets, antiques markets. I think it's the best way to get the best quality thing, the most bang for your buck. So yeah, so that came from Sweden, I think. It's obviously originally from Italy. And then, yeah, the rest is neutral and full of crazy artwork. Over here we have a collection of, this is mostly pieces that are just meaningful to us. Some tiles that we bought in Mexico. Actually, a really good tip for tile, if you want to put a tile on the wall but you don't want to use one of the plates, is actually just Velcro. So these are command Velcro strips. Anyway, it's my favourite tip for hanging tiles. This one is from Georgia. It's a tile, but this one we put in a little frame. They're from artists who are friends, from antiques markets. This is a stamp from Jordan, and that's where my heritage is from. So this were knitted by my daughter's great grandma. So yeah. So when we bought this house, it had a good feeling about it, and it had been loved once, but it had been a while since it had been loved. A lot of the features were gone. There was a lot of damp and mold, so we really had to kind of take it back to brick and start again. So this room is actually the last room, pretty much, that we've tackled, and I just wanted it to feel like your home. I have a quite intense job. I'm a journalist and I travel a lot in difficult environments, and I just wanted to come home and close the front door and it to be my safe place, and the same for my husband and my daughter and this next baby. So yeah, that's why it's
Hi, sunshine, which is a bit crazy, but I think it works. Over here, I actually started recently making some products working with artisans for things that I wanted for my home but I couldn't find. And I really wanted to have like candle sconces, you know, like lighting without the electrician's bill and like with the ambience. So I designed this like zigzag sconce, and this blacksmith in Lincolnshire makes them for me. And yeah, every time I drop them they sell out, which is really exciting. So yeah, this is like my proud achievement of my home, I guess. I realised I didn't really have any mirrors in the house. I think that was partly like a postpartum thing where I was just like not brushing my hair. And then I realised I probably should brush my hair before I leave the house. So I put some mirrors in the hallway, and I picked this one up from an antiques market in London. And I really liked the shape. I think it's like an Art Deco one. So out of MDF, I got a circular saw and I mirrored the shape. I cut it in cardboard first, and then I cut it out in MDF and painted it blue to match the hallway. And so I have a little shelf. We've got like a, you know, like a LED light. And yeah, our keys. And normally it's more full than this. I cleaned it for you. But yeah, so this is like a little happy kind of stop corner before you leave the house. And then I've got this sconce and then this artwork I bought at auction as well. Yeah, I'm a bit obsessed with shopping at auctions, but yeah. In our kitchen, we decided to go for brass worktops, which is a bit unorthodox, and we thought we could mirror that in the hallway. So our side of our like electricity cupboard and our step, like our riser, has also got brass that we got like cut in sheets and stuck on. So kind of adds a bit of light and interest, and also ties in with the kitchen. So come with me to our front room. I think this is my favourite room in the house, actually. It's actually the most neutral room in the house, which is quite unlike me, but I wanted to fill it with colourful things, vintage pieces, and lots of lamps. So when we bought the house, the sash windows had been removed, the fireplace had been removed, the coving and skirting, it was all gone. So we painstakingly put it all back. So we bought this fireplace off like a resale site. Might sense a theme here. We got this Victorian cornicing, which I got to match what the neighbours had, so it would be as original as possible. We put the sash windows back in. We put these kind of grand, taller skirtings back in. We put wood floors back down. We used like Zellage checkerboard tiles for the bottom of the fireplace. And then we have these Vitso shelves, which we've had, I think we've had them for like 12 or 13 years, and they've come everywhere with us. So this kind of collection of random, my husband would say tap, but I would say treasure. And books, lots of like travel books, lots of journalism books, because I'm a journalist. And yeah, lamps everywhere. I mean, you'll struggle to find a corner in this house that can't be lit. So I'm a journalist and I work in TV news. So yeah, news bulletins mostly, so like regular news. I don't have a particular specialism. It has variously been the Middle East, where I've been based and where my heritage is from. I've been based in Russia as like Moscow correspondent. But now I'm like in London off camera and I travel for big stories, but otherwise I stay home. This room is full of like vintage finds. This Ligne Rosé sofa I got for £1 on eBay, which I am so happy with. And it's like a sofa bed and it's really comfy. And then this footstool I made. So I wanted to have something that had like really big ball feet. It didn't really exist, so I got in touch with this wood turner, and he had some leftover like Iroko, so he turned it into the balls I wanted for feet, and then I made the actual footstool out of MDF and upholstered it in this green denim. So this is like a proud achievement for me. We've done a lot of DIY since we got this house. out of necessity, but these are the kind of DIYs that I actually really enjoy. So yeah, this is my creation. And denim is like wears really nicely and is really cheap. So if you ever want to upholster anything and you want it to be really hard wearing, denim comes in loads of colours and it's actually great. This is like a Terence Conran 60s habitat chair. It's actually, this chair is in a design museum in London, not this particular one. And I got this on eBay. It's like, this is like my cat's and my daughter's favourite place to sit. It might be quite hard for me to get back up now I'm pregnant. But yeah, it's like the corduroy has lasted really well. So yeah, some iconic pieces for little budgets. And then here we just have like trinkets. There's this shop in London called Iota Edit. They're also online and they make all of these cool things, like little ceramic fruit. And I went to a class with them and you could like paint your own. So that's one I painted. And I love this garlic. I'd like to get like a whole fruit bowl of these pieces. They're so cute. And this is by a maker called Origo House, and she made like a little portrait of my daughter who's 3, Remy, and she's like makes them out of ceramic. You just send her a picture and frames it like Victorian style, which I think is really cute. And then it's just like family photos, small pieces from artists I love, records. Yeah, that's why this is my favourite room, because it's just full of like little meaningful treasures. I have these really cute ceramic dominoes, which I absolutely love. They're like, this is also from Iota Edit actually. So they're a great little store, and yeah, I love like how they look. I'd like to get more of those. So I also got this vintage zigzag table. This is probably the most dangerous and impractical thing I own, but I'm into zigzags, and I got this steel zigzag table. It's vintage and it's amazing, but then I had a toddler, so it's been bubble wrapped for a while, but now she knows to keep her distance from it because we don't want any scuffed knees. So yeah, maybe when this baby comes, it's going to be in bubble wrap again. But for now, it's like my favourite piece that I own. It's really heavy, it's really cool and brutalist, and it's like one of a kind, which I love. In this room, we mostly like listen to music, listen to records. There's no like TV in here, it's in the snug. So this is like have a drink with friends, have some conversation. Like in a way, it's like the grown-up room. It's got some of the like more artwork in it, more breakable things in it. And my daughter obviously is welcome to come in here, but like there's no toys in here, so this is kind of like the adult space. So come with me into the snug. So this room, as you can see by all the lights on, is really dark. So where this window is where you would have gone out the back door before we did an extension. And a lot of houses in London, like Victorian houses, they would like have that open, so it would be like another hallway. But we didn't want to lose the room by having like a second hallway. So we were like, let's embrace the dark. We like colour drenched the walls, ceiling, skirting, like everything in this like dark green. And then we got the window to bring through some light, but like so that you couldn't walk through, so that they would be, yeah, a full TV room. So this is where you'll find my husband and I after bedtime, after my daughter's bedtime every night. And we picked this colour actually because we got married in November in the Basque Country, and we got married like at the bottom of some mountains, and it was rainy and misty, but it was like really, you know, that kind of like wet green day. So it's kind of reminds us of that colour palette of our wedding. So it's like this cozy, personal, enveloping feeling. And I really love to choose colours like that, like based on memories. I think it's really hard to choose colours from a colour palette. You might be led by trends or like something you've seen on Instagram or Pinterest that might not be something that you'll actually love in years to come. So I like to think of memories and what made me feel like a certain way, and then like look at photos of that time and yeah, and then like lean into those colours. So this and our bedroom is our wedding day in our Basque country, and you'll see in a minute our kitchen is our honeymoon in Mexico. So this is a series of happy accidents. I was collecting these fish plates and one of them smashed, so it's like, instead of throwing it away, let's just like make it an art piece. This is vintage, like a vintage English lamp, and I painted the lampshade. My husband is super into mezcal, so there's like lots of very niche mezcals here. And then, oh, this is clever actually. Well, clever sounds like I'm bragging, but I think it's a good idea. We wanted to have the TV on the wall, but didn't want to have all the cables, and this fireplace doesn't work. So we channeled a hole like through the chimney, and then it goes into this cabinet. So like the like PlayStation, Apple TV, cables, all of that kind of crap goes in here through the fireplace. So it means like hidden wires, but actually like it looks really cute. And this cabinet is vintage as well. And these handles are like this brand Matilda Goad, which is like this cute British brand, and they have these cute back plates. So we kind of updated it because they were broken. So yeah, and I'm not drinking at the moment because I'm 8 months pregnant, but I'm looking forward to coming here and having some of my husband's mezcal in a month. In this room, again, there were like no original features left, so we restored like the cornicing, but the fireplace wasn't working, so we decided instead to make it like a nook, and we did these checkerboard zellage tiles, and like put kind of a brass edging. And this is actually my daughter's train set, but we've got throws here. Yeah, storage is key. And then we have this artwork, which I feel so lucky to own. It's by this artist called Studio Lenker, and it's one of his really early pieces, and I was lucky enough to buy it from him before he got super big and famous and popular. So very treasured piece. And then a photo that my husband took when I was living in Moscow as Moscow reporter, and he came to visit me, and he took some cute photos. So we've got that, and then this really comfy sofa, which is by Rocket St George, and then another footstool that I made with some Missoni dead stock fabric. So I talk a lot about DIY, but I don't actually enjoy DIY, but I like nice things, and sometimes the only way to get those is to make them yourself. I wish I could show you the before of these rooms. They had not been loved. They had this like a laminate floor, but it was really damaged. There was damp. All of the original features had sadly been like ripped out. So, but they were actually the rooms in the best condition in the whole house. So for a while we were renovating, and it took us a while because we did like 18 months of it DIY, like learning to build stud walls and do tiling, and yeah, it's crazy the skills that we learn. So we actually left these rooms almost till last. We had our fridge in here, and it was like actually one of the cleanest, least mouldy places in the house. So the before of this isn't as bad as the other befores, but the house had been loved. It just had a little period of neglect. So it had that good feeling of like a home that had been loved. It just hadn't been able to be looked after. So hopefully now we've looked after it. And this opening was actually already here, but it was quite simple. So a little hack is we wanted it to be like quite thick and grand, like a Victorian house would have been. So we actually used 2 layers of skirting board to like make this kind of grander thing, because you can't really buy architrave this big, not easily anyway. So we kind of made this ourselves, and then to do the transition we kind of did this like black stripe, which looks a bit like there might be a pocket door there, but there isn't. This is just in here. So in this room the floors had been removed, like the original wood floors, so the closest we got to those was this like engineered oak floor, and we put in underfloor heating. So this was like a splurge, but I love these floors so much. I love that you can see the grain, and they look semi like they've been here as long as the floors might have been. But this house was built in 1890, so upstairs we're actually lucky enough to have all the original floorboards, but unfortunately lots had been pulled out in its 130 years of existence. I'm a bit obsessed with gardening. I feel so lucky to have a garden in London, and I spend a lot of my time growing flowers, and so all of these I picked from my garden yesterday ahead of you coming over. It's all a bit wild, but I'm so proud to have grown all these things. I'm a relative novice, but it brings me yeah, a lot of joy. So yeah, these are all from our garden. Do you want to come with me and see the kitchen? Let's go. So welcome to our kitchen. When we first moved in, this actually was a kitchen, but then at the end of the kitchen there was like an accessible bathroom and shower, which we didn't need downstairs. And the view from the garden was like blocked off, and the garden was actually all concrete because they wanted it to be like low maintenance. So we really opened it up, added in these like picture windows, big doors, and this is where we spend most of our time, because we have like a sofa in here, we have this kitchen which I love, and yeah, these big windows, so it's always bright. So you can see it's rainy, obviously, because it's London. When we bought the house, it kind of ended here, but the footprint was the same apart from that. So we extended out to the side, and we decided to expose the steel beams, which is now very useful for hanging bananas and drying flowers. And then we get a lot of artwork home from nursery for my daughter, and we do a lot of art here. So this is kind of where I display our kind of family photos and art. So I actually love having this like American style fridge freezer, because it's like magnet, crazy artwork heaven. This is the other side of that picture window in our snug, and it's unintentionally turned into the perfect play area for my daughter. She loves like having this, like she always says like, this is my area, which is really nice. She's as into flowers as me. She picked those yesterday and put them in her science speakers. It's too cute. So we have, like her toys, and we don't interfere with her area, and it's actually like worked out perfectly. We have a sofa in here. Our kitchen was made by this father-daughter cabinetry maker duo, and so we wanted it to be like birch ply, so it's birch ply, and then the worktops are brass, which some people might hate because they do mark, but I love that like aging patina. So when we first got them, they were like super shiny, and now they're like aging, and I feel like every splash is like, you know, the story of like a drink spilled, or you know, like with friends, or like dinner for my daughter, or I don't know, I love that like aging. So yeah, we embraced the brass. We used Zellage tiles again. I did this tiling with my dad, so excuse any imperfections, but I'm very proud of it. And then we have like bits and bobs we've collected from holidays, and this is a junk shop find. These we bought in Mexico. These two, they're like Oaxacan clay. So it's just like, it's made by my daughter. So it's just like special pieces to us. My husband's really into knives, so we have the knives proudly on display. They're mostly from Japan. I'm mostly not allowed to use them. The microwave and toaster is like tucked away, the spice is tucked away. So we really thought about how to, like, what we needed to store. We made like a really big list of what we needed to store in the kitchen, and then made sure there'd be a space for everything. Our like worktops are a little bit higher than average because my husband's tall and he does most of the cooking. Lucky me. And then this is like a, you know, like a Montessori tower. It's my daughter's, so she can get involved with cooking, which she does all the time. We do a lot of baking, so, and it's a nice coincidence that it matches the kitchen. Come this way and you'll see where we eat all our meals. So this was the area that was a loo and a shower when we first moved in, and it was in quite a state of disrepair actually. The building was kind of falling down, and when we went to add windows, it did fall down, so we had to rebuild it, but we used the same footprint. And I got this. This table was actually as old as the house. I got it in an antiques market, and it was made in like the 1890s, and so was the house. So I love that. So my dad built me this banquette out of birch ply to match the kitchen, and we had it upholstered in this green denim, which I love because it ages really nicely. It's easy to zip off and clean, and it's just like really hard wearing for lots of bums. This actually is maybe one of my favourite features in the house, where we've been recording my daughter Remy's height. Look how tall she is, my baby. So I like that even though this is like scratched and done in pencil, we're like, it's the story of our family in this, as the current custodians of this home. This artwork is also by Studio Lenka. It's actually a commission. At the time we were in Mexico, and he was like, oh, I'll do an artwork inspired by the Frida Kahlo self-portrait where she's sat on a chair with the dog. So that's his interpretation of that, which I love. These again are from antiques markets. They're a copy actually of the Willy Gould ones. The real ones are made of asbestos. So the one exceptional to having a copy is those. And then yeah, this is really messy, but it's where I'm growing all my seedlings to be planted out in the garden later. And then here's like our big back doors, and it's rainy today, so it's not very exciting, but they like, you know, they're bifolds, so they open all the way up to the garden. But our only compromise was we have cats, so there is a cat flap built into the bifolds, don't tell anyone. So they can go out freely. And then this garden was like all concrete before, and now hopefully it's very well loved space, full of my flowers and lots of snails, really a lot of snails. So when we saw the house and it was all blocked off, like no view to the garden, I knew that like it could be like open to the garden. It could feel like you're eating outside without having to actually risk the British summertime of trying to eat outside. So if you want that like vibe, we can just like open the door, and the table's so close you can almost feel like you're eating outside. And then the lime wash walls are inspired by our honeymoon in Mexico, and we really wanted to feel that like joyful feeling that we had then, so we decided to go with this lime wash. A word of warning on lime wash: it marks really easily, but I kind of embrace those flaws, and I love it anyway. And this like terracotta-y colour is also really flattering, so it's really nice like to like sit here in this light. This is also vintage. Everything is vintage. Yeah, so it's like has that feeling of outdoor, but I still have these voiles. My dad's business is curtains and blinds, so I have the hookup. So he got me these voiles, which I love, because you can still have that like billowing outdoor feeling. Yeah, oh look, we actually, because we live in London, there's always some noise. We actually have the train at the back, which at first I thought would be like a big downside, but it's actually a massive plus because it means we're not overlooked, which is really unusual for London. So instead of having like windows looking at us, there's a train every now and then, but I don't mind that. The garden is a bit unusual because it was a blank canvas, so we were like, what do we want to do? And we decided to build a pétanque court. So actually that gravel bit that you can kind of see in the distance is a pétanque court, you know, like French balls. And we really underestimated how hard it would be to do that. It was like 12 tons of gravel that we had to like hand carry through the house because we've got no side access. And we almost never play on it, but it's nice when we do. So we have like the petanque court, we have the planting, we built this like terrazzo island, which I tiled with my dad, and we built this like pink bench, which I used the lime wash like left over from inside, and then I had upholstered in this bespoke stripe from this cute brand called Colours of Ali, and I used like a blue piping, and then I have this arch which I'm growing grapes over. And I have these veg planters for my daughter, so we're growing beans and strawberries and courgettes, and yeah, it's my happy place. Okay, I'm going to take you upstairs. So this is my daughter's room. She's nearly 3, and it's just full of really sentimental pieces, which I feel like is like my favourite thing for a kid's room. So we have like a tapestry that my mother-in-law started when my husband was born, and she gave it to our daughter, which is like so lovely. And actually a tapestry that my nan and I did, my late nan, when I was really little, an alphabet tapestry by her like great grandma, and a poem, and like just some random nice elephant hooks. So it's like, yeah, full of things that are meaningful to us. These are like handmade alphabet tapestries. I love the less attractive video monitor, but you know, I need to do these things. And yeah, because the teddies are sleeping. This is actually really cute. I'll show you this. It's this box, like a keepsake box from Globetrotter, which is this like great British heritage company, and it has like her birth date and like her name and these cute animals on it, and in it we keep like, you know, like all sentimental bits, like some of the things that she's made, like her mittens from hospital. So I love a nice keepsake box, and I like that it doesn't look like, you know, like children's tat. It looks nice for me too. We have this comfy like G-plan chair, which is vintage, and then I got these. My mother-in-law is actually a really talented seamstress, and she made these curtains for us out of some fabric I bought. But the best thing, actually, I feel like with a child's room, you need blackout, and so we have these like these blackout blinds that are like hidden in the frame of the window, and they're so good, and they both come down. So we have the curtains for like aesthetic reasons, and then the less attractive but very practical blackout blinds. Yeah, they're so good. And we have another Globetrotter suitcase there actually above her wardrobe. This wardrobe was my husband's grandfather's wardrobe, so lots of like handed down things in here. And then her toy racks actually are IKEA spice racks. They were like £3 each, and I think they look they're like the perfect size for kids' toys. So there we go, IKEA spice racks. My mother-in-law made this, and her great grandma made that, and then have this like big map of the world that I've been like putting a sticker on the places that she's been. So yeah, lucky girl. I wish I had travelled as much as her, but she's got 3 or 4 stars on there already. So yeah, and this is the only carpeted room in the house actually. Everywhere else it's floorboards, but she has a carpet, a nice wool, like really comfy carpet. So yeah, and she also has like this, my late nan made. She actually made it before I was even married, and she died before I was pregnant, but she'd like made baby things for when I like one day had a baby. It makes me quite emotional. Anyway, very sweet. And my mother-in-law made this gorgeous quilt. Very lucky, we've got some very talented women in our family. If only I were as talented as them. They're, yeah, spectacularly talented. I made that terrible lampshade. This room was originally like going to be a spare room, and then we got pregnant, and I was like, let's make it really like cozy and enveloping, because really she's playing where we are. She's not like coming and playing in her room. She's not that of that age yet. She wants to be like with her mum and dad, and also we want to see her to make sure she's like being safe. So we went for like dark because it's a sleep space, and then she was so lucky to have all these people who love her, who made her these beautiful artworks, who bought this beautiful like handmade mobile. So this room is like a bit of me, but has like lots of playful things for her to look at and enjoy and like learn as well. We have like, we're big into books, she's big into books, and so every evening our routine is to like sit in this chair and we read like multiple stories, and yeah, it's just like ever evolving space for her, which feels really special. So this room, like hopefully everywhere I've shared with you, is a place that I designed so that we could feel like safe and secure at home when so many other things are uncertain. I travel a lot for work and my husband travels a lot for work, and so home is like truly a sanctuary. We're so privileged to have a home, and I feel so lucky from that. Like both of us had mums who suffered a lot to get us basic things when we were growing up, so I feel like so privileged to have this safe space for my daughter and this baby that's going to be here soon. We don't know if it's a girl or a boy. So the whole idea behind this house is like calm, safe, like joyful, if all those things go together, I don't know. Happy place, and miraculously we've done it on a budget through just like grit and determination to like learn skills that we didn't particularly want to learn and hopefully won't use again, but I'm really proud of what we've achieved.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to go to homeworthy.com for exclusive content, shopping guides, and so much more.